Hello there once again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Gamers Without Borders qualification event. We're live here on the Bravo stream, getting ready to head into our final matchup of the day as we shift over towards North America to get ready for our last game. It's going to be the Gaimin Gladiators going up against the Leftovers. And we should be just a few seconds away from getting started with this matchup. We're coming to you guys a little bit delayed. I think we were waiting on one of the teams to jump in, but we have found them. And now it is going to be time to get ready to head into it. Quite a few well-known names inside of the North American scene, if you are familiar with this. Just going down the rosters real quick. For the Gaimin Gladiators, there's going to be Jolton, Arrow, Quartz, Prod, as well as Barring. At least that's what Liquipedia is telling us. We'll get a better idea of that when we jump into game. Then meanwhile, on the Leftover side of things, they're going to be fielding Adapt, Maxley, Dexter, Filthy, and Butters. Those last two names, I think quite a few people should know who they are. So this is actually going to be quite a familiar affair for those of you who follow like the Tier 2, Tier 3 level of North America. Should be quite a few names you recognize, I think, out of that pool. I know Stokes for sure will recognize a few of them. So I'll shut up now and let him talk a little bit about both of these teams.
I mean, absolutely. I think it's going to be quite the affair. I mean, quite a few of these, players for both of these teams, longtime competitive players of Rainbow Six Siege, battling it out inside of the T2, some of them even the T1 scene, and now coming here for the GWB to see if they can win, a large prize pool for the charity of their choice. John, it's going to be quite the fun matchup. We haven't got to see some of these players play in quite some time, at least for you and I's sake. But it seems like that's going to change here today, so I'm excited to get into it.
We do have the picks up as well between both of our teams, so it looks like the Leftovers ended up getting the initial map pick. They're going to take things to a third Kafe, which we'll have for today. So we'll be starting off there. Moving on from that one, we'll be going over towards Bank as the secondary pick from the Gladiators, and then finally we'll end up again on Chalet. Quite a bit of those two maps here today. So Chalet will be where our third map needs to battle itself out if these two teams end up going the full distance. Also important to remind you guys as well, we have our other matchup going on for North America over on the main stream, and that is going to be between Parabellum as well as Space Station. So make sure you guys head over there if you're looking to check that one out. But it is time to get into our game, so let's head into it. Once again, the Gaimin Gladiators up against the Leftovers. So let's head into the bands and see who's going to get knocked out for this Kafe play.
Well, as you said, we've already had quite a bit of Kafe play today, so we'll see if this sticks to what we've seen, and it will indeed. Flores will be removed yet again, such an important and influential operator when it comes to a map like this, and I'll have to see what other pieces of utility are being removed by the offense. It's actually going to be Thatcher this time around. We actually ended up having Thatcher make it through our last ban phase here on Kafe, so back to the old guard here. Wave the band face, and as we'll shift gears and go over to the defensive side. It's going to be Valkyrie removed first, and then what are the Leftovers going to be feeling for their defensive band?
Be finding out in just a second, as obviously we only got one more remaining, and it's going to stay pretty much in line with what we've been seeing. Zero surprises here, as Mira is going to be the last defender to be knocked out. Flores, another one we've been seeing quite a bit of, just because he can access parts of the map that other similar operators that take out utility would not normally be able to with his drones, so still quite a bit too useful for quite a few of our players there, meaning that he's going to be knocked out, and then Thatcher, pretty self-explanatory. He's once again too universally useful, so we'll see him get removed. Got some interesting picks already inside of the first round. The most notable one there on to Quartz, although this has become less and less surprising as Blitz has started to become more and more of a valid pick as we're starting to get deeper into his kind of meta evolvation, or however you want to try and describe it there. I had to come up with my own word for it.
Yeah, I think you do have to come up with your own word to describe Blitz as a character inside of this game, because it just doesn't make a lot of sense at a lot of different corners. And honestly, I think that's why we see the switch up here with Gaimin Gladiators. We've really seen a resurgence inside of the Blitz play when it comes to a lot of the close quarters fights that we see across a lot of the maps. The thing that always comes to mind for a lot of people is the Oregon defense on basement, where people will hold things down inside of elbow, and usually a Blitz rush can handle that situation quite handedly. But in a map like Kafe, there's a lot of longer angles. I mean, really the only thing you have any influence over is if like Leftovers wanted to do something like holding down Cigar. But that'd probably be ill-advised if they have any, early recognition of the situation at all. But fortunately enough for Gaimin Gladiators, they're not going to pick up any shield at all. In fact, they're going to stick to their guns this opening round and just see how aggressive they can potentially get with these two LMGs.
Yeah, Quartz had flirted with a couple different operators in the repick there. I know we saw a Thermite potentially being postured for at one point there too, but he ended up obviously landing on the Zofia, for those who did manage to catch that. So quite a bit of an amorphous lineup here, but still ends up with an appropriate amount of utility, especially in the hard breach department. They'll still have Rudy over here on... Excuse me. We're still going to have Rudy playing into that as well. So he is going to be able to bring that Hibana in and potentially add some hard breach to the table for him and the rest of the Gaimin Gladiators. Regardless, though, team is going to start to work their way forward, try to pop open this hatch, which they've already accomplished in doing, and now look for safe harbor to get themselves down below and towards the inside. Leftovers are not going to have any immediate counteraction to this showing up. Are going to keep the two players in the back of either, of course, the bathroom position and as well as Freezer, but in terms of swings coming back out, that would be over in the pixel corner where we usually expect our more aggressive players to be positioned in. Dexter currently taking up that spot for the Leftovers, so we'll see him potentially swing it out from that spot as we're just waiting for the Gladiators to make their first move now, which I think we're not too far off from here with the flash dumps currently working their way into Cigar.
Well, lots of different angles to adopt here for Leftovers as well, as they'll be able to take down Arrow, the Nomad now gone, continually trying to fight the Christmas Repel, as well as just the Christmas presence that's now coming in via ticket. Dexter is going to have some extra discs to be able to add, but it doesn't matter if he takes down Jolt, and he'll be traded out, but he already got two. Going to put Leftovers ahead on the man count, and still with a lot to do. They'll have to burn out the gate for Cigar, giving them access to Christmas. The Kairos will come in, but so will the smoke grenade, forcing Rudy back deeper into Cigar to gift over yet another stun to the laser gate gods. Quartz now with Barring on the roof. They need to find some strong positioning to try and support their teammate in the building at the current moment. That's why we're going to see the rotation here from Quartz. More than likely going towards Heaven Window. See if he can possibly have any influence over the players that are potentially going to try and hold things down on this end. It looks like we could potentially also have a white rotate soon, but as soon as I say that, we're swinging into the building.
Rudy already with the first pickup here, but Adapt is not even noticed in this central cabinet here. Barring has to turn back around and quickly course correct for the Gladiators. Thankfully, he does. Evens it back up into a 2v2. Swings working themselves up white. One player is going to be allowed across the divide and into Freezer. The second one with a potential to pinch out Barring as well, but Maxley will finish the job all on his lonesome, just leaving Rudy in the post plant. Also pinched out here inside of the 1v2. Needs to try and get a little bit more mobile just because the position will be quite obvious from the case play. Is able to correct, though, and take out Butters when he tries to go for the first pickup on the kill here. Rudy will have about half HP to deal with Maxley, and he as well now a little bit lost, trying to figure out if Rudy would have played aggressively, swinging in, and indeed he will, but Maxley catches it, has just enough time for the counter to fuse as well, as the Leftovers will be taking control of the first round.
Incredible reaction time there from Maxley at the tail end of that round to secure the 1v1 and the case. Very sound overall defensive strategy coming out of them as well. Punishing Gaimin Gladiators very early on, especially on their Christmas take. They had to try and reconcile somehow, and it seems to be a very hot-to-trot effort into Cocktail. That leaves Adapt in a little bit of a situation. He's able to at least get one before he's taken down, but that's going to give the plant on over to the Gladiators. But luckily enough, Maxley good for the clutch situation that it was really needed for. It seemed like for a split second there, Rudy was going for the quad as he'd already picked up 3, but shut down on his hot streak, giving Leftovers the round.
Not going to happen, though, so the Leftovers end up with control over this opening round and extend beyond that into a first floor hold. A couple operator changes going to show up on the Gladiator side of things as a direct result of that. Interesting switch up from Quartz as let's get flirts with an interesting pick in the Ash there, but doesn't look like he's sticking with it as Zofia has been re-swapped out for him yet again. Slight change up for Rudy as well, just changing the hard breach operator specifically. They're kind of going all over the place with it, so I'll hold my breath for a few seconds. But it looks like it resumes on a normal path. Then finally, Jolton brings a secondary hard breach into this if they should need it. While Barring brings the usual mainstay of Finka and Arrow as well. Add a Nomad in to bring a little bit of flank watch once they start taking some interior control.
Towards some bakery presence at this point for Leftovers. Gaimin Gladiators sticking to their guns outside. You can see Barring on quite the angle here. If anybody steps through the doors of VIP, they are immediately going to be bodied by this LMG. This is not a spot that you see picked up very often, but you can definitely tell they've put some forethought into this position, or at least tried this out in something like ranked and just realized how nasty this spot can be in certain situations. And we'll see him more than likely play this out for the rest of the time. But for the remaining members of the Gaming Gladiators, they're moving in towards Bakery. There's going to be some discs around the space, so these Selma charges not necessarily going to work out at the current moment. They'll lose a couple of those, as Max will now have to deal with some problems of his own. He'll deal with that pretty handily with an impact grenade.
Maxley continuing to position himself behind the Bakery counter, waits out for the next aggressive swing on the Gladiators. Not going to see it anytime soon, though, as they as well still try to play into their drone presence pretty heavily, as far as I can tell here. So we'll continue to wait out for that opportunity to find impact. Adept also helping out from the inside of Prep Kitchen, of course, in the attempt that we see, or in case we see an attempt to move in towards Small Bake and put that pressure against Maxley from that direction. Dexter will fend off the first bit of it, though, finding Jolton instead. That deals with the Maverick play from the other side of this. Max still just continuing to hold this, waiting for his chance to strike, and may very well get that chance in a second here. Once again, the Gladiators in position to strike forward, but not really going to feel the confidence to do so here as they try to wait it out, and instead going to be Barring that finds the trade against Dexter here. A little bit of presence swung out against Adapt as well, and that's going to send him deeper into Prep Kitchen, as now they finally have to give up this spot. But Maxley will continue to find success as he fends off Quartz, as the first player that attempts to take Bakery control will go down. There's an immediate exchange, however, from the Gladiators' side. Barring getting one with his nades to keep the numbers even at 3 apiece.
Well, speaking of Barring, he'll go down and immediately Adrenal Surge himself back up. Rudy will claim yet another life. Leftovers now down to Adapt. Has the isolated fight inside a Bakery, but early shots will give away his position. Has to back off towards K1. Those ones working his way in through Whiskey as well, but this is harsh positioning for him. It's way too many angles to manage. And Rudy sneaks up on him. Out from inside of Whiskey with the 2 times. He will walk back into the angle. He will go down. That's the first round for the offense here for Gaming Gladiators.
So the Gaming Gladiators are going to trade things back quite quickly, ending up at a 1-1 scoreline as they're able to take that control for themselves. Leftovers felt it was close enough, and I would generally tend to agree, so they're going to retry this site, see if they can maybe leverage their early round aggression a little bit better here and be able to reduce the numbers a bit more cleanly this time. Able to trade it out in that previous round, so still keeping it quite close, but not able to bring it down to a point where they could just fall back into the site and play it cautiously. Was fighting it to the bitter end that entire time, so going to see if they can make things favor themselves this time instead of their opponents in the Gladiators. More than likely going to see the same operator lineup come in for the Gladiators. I say that, but there's actually quite a few changes in the lineup right now, so I'm curious to see if those are going to get reverted. For Rudy, it looks like it will. For the rest of the team, we'll have to wait and see, as Jolton may want a little bit more of a comfortable pick here. He's had a rough go of it the first 2 rounds. The Twitch may help to get him on the scoreboard finally.
Well, with that being said, Leftovers now facing down the barrel of potentially losing the lead already, as they'd only gathered it inside of round 1. Gaimin Gladiators now stomping the yard here and seeing if they can potentially claim their second round. Some solid adjustments across the board, as it's going to be a kitchen offense instead. So the Sledge is going to play pretty handily into this with the X-Kairos as well for the hatches and some of the other hard-to-reach areas if they so choose. Past that, though, with Quartz as well as Jolton along for the ride with that soft breach, this should be fairly straightforward for them on the mid-level. As soon as they're able to get control of mining and train, we'll begin breaking up all the flooring and making a lot of the area inside of Kitchen pretty difficult to play.
Gladiators working their way up onto the roof, take that initial control for themselves, and obviously are going to begin the process of slowly working their way down. Meanwhile, we're on the Leftover side of things. Not a whole lot actually building up for these guys inside of the first minute of play, simply because, once again, trying to play this mainly from a horizontal perspective since it's their first floor hold once again. Gladiators will have a very easy time droning this out and finding it pretty much empty for the open for the taking. So with that, the Leftovers are going to continue to kind of just wait, not have a whole lot to do downstairs except for gathering intel about where this potential clear is going to come from, and they'll know pretty quickly as soon as the Gladiators start to move forward and clear out the majority of this second floor. What they'll have to watch out for is it'll all be on the vertical plane instead of the horizontal one they tried to play into here.
Well, now with the Gaimin Gladiators descending off of the roof, Arrow's going to be setting things up around red. Has the air jab down, so no rotations can come in from that side, and now the soft breach will begin. Just like we talked about before, this is going to make it difficult to play around kitchen as well as some of the spaces inside of bunker. You can also get freezer access if you would so choose. We already have some gunfights going back and forth, but it's mostly Quartz just murdering Maxley instead. Not really a gunfight when it comes to that position, as Quartz has such an off angle, it's way too difficult for them to try and get any bullet to slip through those cracks there. Jolton, though, will be able to claim yet another one as Adapt will go down, and Leftovers now looking to try and reclaim a couple bodies here going into this last minute.
Butters as well, still primed and ready to fend off the first swings from the Gladiators should they try to commit to this white drop. At the same time, 35 seconds left. There's not a whole lot of time for the Gladiators to potentially change up their own fate, and especially their strategy. Butters with some unfortunate timing there. They could have had a scope in onto one of the players from the Gladiators crossing up on top. Just wasn't lined up for it in time, so a missed one at that. The Leftovers as well, still denying presence from the inside of Freezer here, as you're going to see those Toxic Babes continue to plume out from inside of it. Filthy able to drop the first arrow with a quick move inside of Whiskey to trade it, but nearly gets caught from the other side by Small Bake as well. You can see that bulletproof revealing its position constantly. Butters, once again, the timing just not favoring him here, worried about a potential swing from Whiskey. Instead, it's going to come from inside of Freezer. At the end of those exchanges, looking like our attackers end up coming out on top of it, so they will take the edge and the lead along with it.
Yes, indeed. And now Gaimin Gladiators, after claiming that lead for the very first time, will have to try and reconvene, see exactly what they want to get done next with this map. It's been some beautiful clears thus far, really punishing Leftovers for a lot of the mispositioning that we've been seeing, especially with the way that they were able to play with the verticality inside of that last round, forcing Leftovers' hand and potentially forcing them to make some of the moves that we saw, like the next kill coming through for Adapt passing away to Jolton there at the very tail end of that initial engagement. But either way, that's what you see that big lead come from the offense, and just making it way too difficult for Leftovers to really try and do anything with the round past that moment. So with that being said, we're headed up towards Bar and Cocktail to see what Leftovers potentially do here. It's going to be quite a bit of mitigation, as they'll be bringing not only Wamai and the Rooney, but the Jaeger and a couple of other odds and ends. Just Smoke as a rudimentary solid pick, able to make rotations and everything else in between. It also has a Smoke utility to be able to delay, as well as Maxley on what seems to be a very solid pick for quite a few fraggers nowadays with the Alibi.
Got the Gladiators on the field here, already working themselves through and getting themselves in a position for initial clear. We can see one specifically getting ready to potentially hop in towards Bakery and make a move forward from this spot. It's Quartz. Is he manning that position here, as we'll see him the first to swing in. The rest of the Leftovers still positioned all across the building here, looking to waste the time away elsewhere. So not going to see any immediate reaction or any immediate fights come out for the Quartz or anyone else on the assault just yet, but we'll be building towards that here. As we can see, actually, Jolton gonna get himself juiced back up. Butters with the bit of delay here as he hops himself out to make sure he confirms the kill. And Quartz, good thing he made this entry earlier on to get himself into Big Bakeries. He's able to quickly rotate himself up the stairs, and yes, even though his teammate goes down, he's able to make sure that Butters doesn't get away with it, trades him back out, locks this player count in down to a 4v4.
Repositioning of Quartz now out towards Blacktop. He'll punch open the mining window, but dusts off to another locations with the rest of his squad. They have another player downstairs inside of VIP that's barring at the current moment. Going to likely droning some things out across the map. He'll begin hopping too now as well. Arrow, more than likely inside of the same boat, as he'll probably begin repelling here on the west side. And he will, in fact. They're looking to abuse this cocktail area as they have Quartz underneath. They'll be able to try and dislodge any player that attempts to play this space, even though, as of right now, I think the Leftovers have already identified that this is indeed a cocktail take. As you can see, quite a few of the members have already shifted away from this side of the building.
Already trying to line up some free fire here into the site. They can edge out a member or two of the Leftovers roster. Dapt has gone down, I believe, not necessarily from Arrow's free fire, but another member, I think, potentially lining that up, dropping him. Dexter's taken some heat, too, as he's gone down to sub 50, barring in his attempt to swing himself up through red, and will succeed in reaching the top, but now needs to make his impact known here. And thankfully, that won't be too hard to accomplish. The majority of the leftovers either down or close to it already, but Maxley seems ready for at least one challenge to be thrown against him. He moves up, is able to catch Barring Filthy with the second one. The leftover is actually staying in this fight. As we see their first trade come back against them, Barring able to line up one of his nades and line us up into a 2v2 late game situation here. And that's actually forced the Gladiators out of this fight entirely here with their red stairs play attempt failing. Rudy moving forward, trying to get this player inside of Cigar, and actually Rudy just going to storm directly through the laser gates. That opens up an opportunity for Arrow to finish him off, as yes, Rudy will still be lost from it, putting us down to a 1v1, and we can see here Maxley just barely dodging those shots at the end of the round. Came down to quite literally the last few seconds of it, as our defending player is able to escape it and win it out on the timer.
Arrow immediately just calls Cap on the 60 HP. He doesn't believe him. Honestly, I think it was around like 40, to be fair. But either way, it was definitely another bullet that he was going to need to tag him with, especially through the side of Hut. So super unfortunate for Arrow there that he wasn't able to catch him, as he was just sprinting over into Cigar to try and find him. And as everybody knows, you have to go through that animation when you stop sprinting before you're able to fire. So fortunate enough for Arrow, not able to win it out in that situation, and that leads us into round 5. You're at a 2-2 scoreline.
So things continue to look very close, as neither team able to stretch out, ascertain a massive advantage here in the first 2/3 of our opening half. Obviously still a bit of a ways to go here, so we'll see if the leftovers can continue to adjust and find some solidity, or if we're gonna be on for a real seesaw ride to go back and forth throughout the majority of not only this game, but the other maps in play as well here. We've had some close series today, and this one is more than likely going to be no exception to that, as the Gladiators look to set their right foot forward here, already being spawned out on the map. Let's see how they approach the clear. Is more than likely this is going to be a top-down play again from these players to try and get themselves in for that second floor control.
Well, some cool little tidbits being brought in by the Gladiators, obviously, with Barring on the Nook. He'll begin pushing in right into Bakery. We've already seen this kind of play before. As long as he doesn't sprint here, he should not be discovered. He's made it on through. No sprinting, no nothing at all, really, to give up his location. As long as he doesn't do that, he won't be seen by that camera. I should make it all the way up red. And a little hole here that he's going to have to worry about, but Butters with a great sense, identifying that somebody's more than likely around the red area, and he's just going to face check it outright, and he'll win the fight, catching Barring completely off guard. The leftovers now with the lead.
Leftovers indeed in control here, looking to try and exercise that even further here, pulling back on the large majority of their aggressive tendencies. One player is still going to remain extended out, I believe, on each floor. You can see that red rotate working its way up right now. And at least one more continues to have that extended control over towards the cocktail bar. But as you're going to see, Quartz try to sneak past all that, tries to directly insert himself into the fray. That will not work. It'll be caught quite quickly, in fact, due to the Banshees in position, so he'll have to move out of that one. Dexter as well continues to pick up kills for the leftovers, as he now finds Jolton eliminating him. Maxley continues to whittle down the remaining attacker presence across the map right now. Quartz and Rudy now the only two remaining, and as you can see, plenty of tricks left up the sleeves of the leftovers here, as they have some regression they've yet to even throw out yet. Quartz is now the only player remaining. Every other single attacking route, not including this hell one, has failed. So Quartz will have to somehow try and make this one work with the minute he has remaining on the clock here. Trying to spray in, looking for anyone that he could possibly get a duel against and win it, but only able to find that once against Filthy. Immediately exchange afterwards. The round, of course, falls into the hands of our defenders.
Fantastic round there from Butters, shutting down so many different entry points of the Gaimin Gladiators, claiming 3 bodies that time around. But I mean, we really have to just give him the gold star on the board in the classroom. when it comes to that initial play that we saw. The Nook trying to make her way up red and then immediately taken down just off game sense, really, from that moment, unless they initially got some information of him just moving inside of that door and were able to make, good on that and just realize that that play was going on. But either way, I mean, it was just such a strong effort there from Butters to shut down a lot of what was going on for the Gaming Gladiators.
Attackers need to locate and defuse bombs.
And so we will take another peep at things as the Gladiators look to course correct one final time against a first floor assault this time around. The Leftovers, of course, still bringing that huge spread of utility mitigation primarily, but for the Leftovers, let's be a little bit careful about the way they approach things here. A few of their players being caught out away from the site inside of the early round left opportunities open for the Gaming Gladiators to kind of trade their way to a win ultimately. The last time we went onto this site, and I'm sure they will be looking to repeat the same thing if they can get it, potentially with a bit more of a cleaner result too, seeing as they struggled with taking out some of those extended players. But when they finally were able to do so, the defense was spread a little bit too far thin, and they just did not have the numbers to prepare themselves for the eventual rush of the remaining players on the Gladiators, and as such, the Leftovers took control, or lost control, of this previous defense. Looking to change it up this time and lock in what would be a 4-2 half if they can accomplish it, but if the Gaming Gladiators repeat their success, we're headed for an even scoreline, 3-all.
We'll see if they'll be able to accomplish that as they clamber up the side of the building to the west, looking to get rid of these hatches that we know is the call sign to the start of a good Kafe round. Everything getting popped open here. Barring will begin sputtering at the wall just to see if he can potentially catch somebody off guard inside of Christmas. Always a good angle to spam when you are on the roof. Can catch people off guard by ticket and a couple of the other far-reaching areas around stage. Either way, though, Ports will be on the drone game here, trying to clear things out inside of Reedy. Not too much going on this mid-floor for the Leftovers. They're mostly keeping this one pretty close to the chest, is what we can see at a minimum. Is a pretty clear third and second floor. All except for a potential body that could be moving up the white stairs at this moment. Barring also coming down, some shots back and forth, the smoke out. Barring's going to hop over and run back through the smoke just to dock himself back up with the adrenal surge. And that'll at least be able to give Gaming Gladiators the initial foothold that they want so badly over the second floor. Start to be able to abuse these sledgehammers as well as this skeleton key on Jolt.
Barring continued to look for opportunities to impact down below through the freezer stairs access. He'll reach the bottom of white there, but won't have the confidence to go fully forward just yet, as obviously the Christmas extension is still going to be alive, along with two other members of the Leftovers continuing to show off their own presence closer over towards the front door area. Huxley as well still has full presence on the inside of Bakery and can continue to deny any attempt from the Gaming Gladiators to flush him out, especially as you can see here on the inside of areas like Prep Kitchen, where now the Leftovers have kind of abandoned their positioning. This is how the Gaming Gladiators were able to work their way into the site, though, was by opening up all these top-down angles and then kind of flushing their way in, while the Leftovers didn't have a lot of ways to directly stop that type of play. And we've got a similar situation kind of built up here, as you're going to see the Gaming Gladiators work their way down that hatch now. The extension into Christmas could cause some pretty big issues, though, as you're going to be seeing over in the corner, mainly because, yep, this cutoff is clean for Filthy, and on top of that, you've got the Toxic Babe to mitigate additional drops. They have made their way down. Case control has not been retained just as of yet, but that's going to be corrected soon enough. Now the chance is there for the Gaming Gladiators to work their way forward, with two members inserted to the inside of Freezer, and more importantly, Arrow going for a plant, barring Force back, but on the refrag, he moves in, takes down Butters. Dexter and Maxley, though, able to frag out two more for the defensive end of things. The plant does go down, but it's only Barring and the player that planted it still alive, and now just Barring on the outside. He's been able to hold his ground here over by the White Stairs door. Still has to contend with moving himself forward to stop this counter defuse, and will not be able to do that. Filthy finally ends his reign, so the Leftovers get themselves one more round to close out the half.
It's a 4-2 half for the Leftovers as they'll take over on the offensive side, obviously meaning that the defense is now in GG's hands, even though Leftovers is the one a little bit closer to that. So Bar Cocktail will be the first defense after a very successful defense from the Leftovers. They allowed the plant to go down, but it's one of those moments where it's like, yeah, but at what cost, right? So many bodies going down from GG, and really only having the LMG to fight back over inside of white, and it just simply didn't work for them. I mean, we saw Barring constantly trying to take the fight with the VIP players, as well as trying to deal with the player inside of Whiskey, and he's successful in one of those ends, but when you have to get everything down into a 1 versus 3, I mean, it's just a very, very unfortunate circumstance. They just were a little bit too far off the reservation from each other and just couldn't try and help out any of their teammates inside of that situation that could have potentially have made things easier.
So, moving back into our second half, the Gaimin Gladiators have fallen behind, but they're not done just yet, especially on the defensive side of Kafe here. There plenty of opportunities for them to look for a rebound, look for an opportunity to swing back into this game still and remain competitive. But the leftovers only a simple 3 rounds away from shutting it down. The Gladiators will have to be careful about where they try to rotate towards if things don't go well on these first few sites. If they try to rotate too much, could just leave themselves without any home to fight for. And obviously, one full rotation against them leaves the leftovers with 7 rounds. So to make sure they start things off consistently and solidly so they do not let the leftovers run away with the current scoreboard. You move up these hatches first for the leftovers, as quite a few of them are going to immediately ascend over towards the roof and look to move them in a good position to start getting some access to areas like Cigar. But it will be a slow build up here, as we've come to expect in these third floor holds.
Well, speaking of these third floor holds, how is Leftovers going to begin breaking this down? They've already gotten some solid drone insight as to what this opener is looking like from GG. The other Twitch drone from Maxley will be zapped down, but by the defense. Another drone, not the other Twitch drone, will be in. This is another thing about Twitch. She actually has an extra drone because she gets one inside of prep phase. So she technically has 3 drones, which is a pretty solid thing to have for your kit inside of Rainbow Six, with just how much those things are worth. So still has an opportunity to use that Twitch drone to get rid of some other utility later on if necessary. Past that, though, for the leftovers' sake, not too much going on at the current moment. Still so much roof presence going into this minute 30 marker, but that will change as soon as Ticket Wall is exploded.
Butters already with a prime position to cut off the new balcony positions as well as most of the interior. Nicely played there, as that shot's going to land directly on top of Jolton. Beautifully done. I was going to say, be a little bit limited on seeing inside of Cocktail, but apparently not. So lines up a singer of a headshot like that. A good start here, but now the rest of the team needs to move in and get themselves ready to try and purge forward a bit here. Butters will have to come in and help out with that as well. Chuck another nade to clear out the Pixel player. So as you can see, well, yes, Butters is making huge stride forwards on the Cocktail side of things. Inside of Cigar, not much is moving at all right now, so they may have to fight with whatever they've claimed outside here. Butters knows he'll have free reign to move throughout this balcony. Maxley as well, able to make quick work of Barring, so things are quickly falling to pieces for the Gaimin Gladiators. That's until, of course, Arrow and Rudy can get themselves into this fight. They find both Dexter and finally stop the reign of Butters, too, who had been a serious player, putting a lot of problems into their Cocktail hold. Filthy, though, exposes Rudy as he steps out just a bit too far from his freezer position and is able to take him down from the rooftop, leaving just Arrow in the fight, where Filthy will also be able to manage him and shut this round down, putting our attackers just 2 more away from closing out the first map.
What a solid round from the leftovers on offense, breaking that site down, especially from what we saw inside of the initial part of that round. It took them a while to get things warmed up, but once they did, I mean, especially for Butters, he opened up so much space for the leftovers to come in and take control. There was really nothing that the Gaimin Gladiators could do, even with the big pickups that they got near the tail end of the round. I mean, the man advantage was already so in favor of the leftovers that it was practically impossible to try and fight back unless there was some lucky star looking over them or something along those lines. But past that, though, Gaimin Gladiators now with an opportunity to try and hold leftovers off of map point here on the kitchen service defense.
So things looking a bit bleak here now for our friends on the Gaimin Gladiators. I believe we are going to be in a bit of a pause here for just a second. So attack pause coming in indeed for players on the Gaimin Gladiators potentially, but it's already going to close out. And we're going to get ourselves back in game here and see. All right, give us a moment, folks. It looks like we just had a little bit of delay was what was going on there, starting the round. So it was a bit of server lag. Apologies. Thought we were in attack pause, but Apparently not the case. As we get ourselves into round number 8, looks like it's rocking and rolling now. Leftovers, like I was saying in the post round there, just 2 more away from closing it down versus the Gaimin Gladiators, at least on this first map. Still have to look into our second one, however, to see how these teams try and evolve, and if things go the way of the Leftovers, how the Gaimin Gladiators will work their way back into this matchup. For the Gladiators, however, currently looking at a zombie pickup finally showing up for them, and it's on Jolton too. Jolton continuing to struggle in this matchup, by the way, currently at 1-7. So we'll see if the Azami will potentially change that up, as I believe it's going to be used to play to the inside of Crispus with the way that those knives are currently going down. Normally this is going to be one taken up by a smoke, but could also be played just as well here with the ability to add that additional cover by Jolton.
Well, that really didn't work out, I think, how he exactly wanted it to, but it is what it is. He'll break out the window there and potentially get some information or something along those lines, but it's practically going to be the same thing as having the other, that's rough, Jordan. I don't know what really to help you there with, Bud, but that's unfortunate. Butters will catch him on the held door here with a quick drone in via pillar, and this is the harsh reality of playing this front room here inside of Cafe. If you try and go for like the dark window or something like that, or like just that underneath area from new balcony, it's always going to be really, really punishing. Past that, really the only knife that he got down was this one on the red window, and like we were talking about before, this is pretty easy to manage. It's just going to be a simple punch from the outside, or they can get rid of it on the inside, but they don't necessarily have to either. It's not really of the utmost importance when it comes to the bottom sight, having access to that window. So now, really, the Leftovers have just gotten rid of one of the most important operators, more than likely, to how the earlier parts of this round was going to go, and now this is looking to be a lot easier on their conscience. Especially after that.
Butters starting things out well here for the Leftovers as well by eliminating barring. Things continuing to look good here for them, as once more taking a solid stance, especially on this attacking side as well. Much more one-sided here as Butters just sends Rudy soaring. A beautifully placed nade from the outside. No mitigation catching that either, so either a very well-placed nade or just poor utility usage coming out from the Gladiators. There's no ADS available to eat that one up. Court's finally responding with one of his own. A second being found too. A bit too much focus for Butters on arrows, so he's not able to save Dexter here. But now the swing from the inside, which is going to be corrected by Maxley. Things looking close for a second there, but our attackers able to ultimately get control at the end of the day and take their second to last round.
Leftovers now simply running away with Cafe, a 6-2 scoreline. It looks so very close at first, but now, since they've gotten on the offensive side, it has been utter dominance no matter what the Gaimin Gladiators throw at them. Early aggression, a new operator, it doesn't matter. All of these have went the way of Leftovers, and now they're looking to seal the deal here on a kitchen service, kitchen cooking defense, but I don't know if that is going to be able to slow down Butters in the slightest. He has had the sauce when it has came to the opening moment so far here on Cafe. He's more than likely looking to take it one step further.
We'll see if he and the rest of the squad can accomplish that. As like you said, just that one extra round is all they really need to work towards here. Have this first map locked in. Other maps still in the future, folks. It is going to be a best of 3 these teams will play into, of course. While we've got Kafe for our first map, Bank is on the docket for map number 2, a map that provides a little bit more freedom to our roaming players for the defensive side inside of like the early to mid round, but overall when it comes to mid and late round style play, will actually play out quite similarly to how Kafe does. So you're going to see a lot of the same, and that might be trouble for the Gaimin Gladiators if they don't have a new plan of action when it comes to our second map on Bank. Either way, though, they still have an opportunity to recover here on Kafe. It's bleak, but it is indeed there, but they'll need to get 4 rounds in a row here to have a chance at it and trigger overtime, a task that quite a few of our other teams have failed to do today. So let's see if the Gladiators can change up their own fate and keep themselves in the fight.
Well, it's going to have to be pretty hard fought. I mean, the Leftovers have been taking it to them on every single look. Gaimin Gladiators trying a lot of different things, but none of them really working out in their favor. Time and time again, losing gunfights, and haven't been able to get over that. Jolton especially, and pretty hot water at the current moment. 1-8, not able to improve upon his scoreline just yet, but he's still staying active, still ready for whatever is ahead of him. Potentially able to try and help them over this next round and help them to try and get into overtime. Butter's already with some damage, but nothing really to call home about, especially when it comes to Finka. She'll more than likely just heal herself back on up with the adrenal surges, and that's exactly what we're going to see as Butter is just a few moments away from being back at max HP.
He's still looking for his first target from the top-down POV, but not going to be presented with one so easily. Just gives the all-clear signal of what more than likely should be an open room for his squad mates, and will descend directly into it. Once again, the Gaimin Gladiators don't want much to do with this early clear. Not going to try and contest again heavily. Keeping an eye on the stair in the event they get an opportunity to pick off a header too early on here, but that as well has evaded the Gladiators for the most part. Was having quite cautious with the way they approach this first minute of play. As we enter the final minute, our second, they do need to start prepping themselves for battling it out against the players down below, and Filthy is nearly thrusted into one of those fights as he reveals one of the players below him and gets a few shots sent his way. Jolt.
Well, frag grenade out for Butters as it won't be able to tag up much inside of sight. This timer beginning to dwindle as well, but still a decent amount of time in siege time as you tend to see people plant down to that 0-0 marker. Another frag grenade out, but won't catch anything. Maxley now adjusting to the bottom of white to try and assist with the play. About to have his hologram back up as well, but he's got some frag grenades of his own. One out and won't be able to catch much as might be able to just catch the deployable shield in the hallway if there even was one. I didn't even catch that, in fact. Another one out now to try and get rid of it at the current moment, and it will. There's still a player inside of VIP to worry about. A stun grenade could potentially help this out with Dexter, but no, Dexter's going to go down to Rudy, who was the player inside of VIP. The case now out of the hands of the offense. Gaimin Gladiators, they're going to run away with the round. It's a flawless round for them with their backs against the wall. They'll be able to at least claim one before Kafe goes by the wayside.
I feel like there was a calm at one point there after that last round from the Gaimin Gladiators. It was just like, all right, guys, no swinging until 20 seconds. Like, that's the rule. Because that's basically, for the most part, how the Gladiators were able to waste so much time off the clock. Just played it way more passive than they did the round before that there. Not taking all the early duels that they were more prone to taking in areas like Coat Check and Whiskey. And because of that, Leftovers were kind of expecting to get it. So they just sat back and wasted like 30 seconds of their own time. Finally, when they were ready to move in, that's when the Gladiators got aggressive. That's when they started fighting back after they picked up a kill or two from their default position, because they had absolute right to at that point. So much better pace there from the Gladiators and much better usage of the time clock, especially when it came down to the final like 30-40 seconds there.
So for the Gaimin Gladiators, still requiring 3 rounds, count them, 3 rounds in order to make it to overtime. And it all starts here in this bar defense. It's going to have to be a perfect site rotation. If they win this, they'll be heading towards the mid floor. That's where they got the decision between mining as well as Fireplace Hall, or Fireplace Hall as well as Reading. But this really depends on what the team wants at the current moment, but they have to get past this initial defense first. And they're not only doing that, but they were initially thinking about bringing something else inside of that place there for Rudy, but they'll give the smoke on over to Rudy, and Quartz will instead grab the Malusi inside of the pregame. So I'll have that along for the ride. This top floor defense looks to have quite a bit of denial, but it's mostly down to the Electro Claws of Arrow to really try and hold back Leftovers for an extended period of time.
You got Maxley and the rest of the Leftovers already reaching that rooftop point, so we'll start to see them descend into areas like Cigar pretty soon, more than likely. So get themselves ready for that. Wasn't able to find their ultimate victory on the first floor assault. They'll have to try and do it upstairs instead here. Should be able to field it just as well, but they still find themselves a way to insert into the building, which can oftentimes be one of the more difficult parts of approaching this site, is finding that initial staging ground. As we saw for these players, however, at least with Butters at the beginning of this half, they're able to make quite a few kills happen in a bit of an unexpected position, and that too gives this team an opener to work their way forward. So they need to call on him yet again to get that done. And at the moment, all of their drone press is just being denied outright here. I've seen like 3 different drones now get shot out the second they've been deployed. It's going to start to become a bit problematic here for the leftovers. They've now lost, as of a few seconds ago, over half their count. Dexter, though, is getting a little bit impatient, possibly lining up the Gara hook for a play. Someone else will be sitting at the other end of it, so needs to be ready to take a fight pretty much immediately. Thankfully, the changes to this operator do make that somewhat possible now. As he goes in, takes the fight, and wins it. However, trades will start coming in from the other side. Jolton and Quartz exchange that right back to keep us in an even 3v3. Butters, though, able to make his way forward from New Balcony again. They have the majority of control there. But Dexter struggling to move himself forward from the defender balcony positioning here. He's going to take quite a bit of heat from White Hallway, and so far has been unable to volley that back against his opponents.
Dab with a solid reposition here with Dexter swinging in towards Freezer. It's all down to Jolton now, playing in towards stock leftovers. They've finally done it. It gets down to the 3 versus 3, but it's gotten too complex. Jolton tries to swing the close angle. It'll be taken down by the player inside of Cocktail. Leftovers taking Kafe and pushing us on to map 2.
And the leftovers, a solid win at that of 7-3. A little bit bumpy inside of the opening half when they were on defense, but as soon as they took over the attacking side, they took over, quite literally, the attacking side. They're only losing, I think, 1 round inside of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that sets us up for map number 2. Stick with us. We're going to go to a quick break, give the players a chance to rejuvenate themselves, and when we return, we'll be getting ourselves ready for the second and possibly final matchup here on the stream today. Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Gamers Without Borders qualification event. We are nearly at the end of day number 1 here, showcasing one matchup from each of the region's tournaments that we have going on right now. That's going to continue not only throughout tomorrow, but the rest of the weekend as well, as we try to figure out who our top teams in each region are going to be as they try to move on towards our main event. We've got a whole load of prizing to be given out, mainly in charitable donations for this event, but as well, the teams that make it to our main event will have that opportunity to fight for an even bigger prize pool in direct contributions to the players. So very exciting stuff. Definitely want to be trying to make it through, but we are going live with the second map. So let's get into it. Once again, it's the Leftovers versus the Gaimin Gladiators. The Gladiators are on thin ice after dropping our first map over on Kafe. Now we get ready to move on to Bank, where they could potentially be knocked down into the lower bracket if they don't recover.
Well, with that being said, Bank now up onto the docket. Abana will be removed. The Hatch Queen playing too strongly into this map. And what will be our secondary offensive ban? Osa, also a fantastic pick here, as she tends to have a lot of really strong setup around not only some of the top floor windows when it comes to that north side, but also around the server when it comes to attacking CCTV downstairs. Kaid also falling into a very similar vein when it comes to very strong setup. Even though the EMPs are still out, they don't want to have to be bringing Kaid along for the ride on either end and have to worry about having that Thatcher in order to get those hatches open. So instead, they'll get rid of him. And last but surely not least, it is going to be none other than Mira as our last ban here on Bank.
So some good stuff indeed coming in. Not anything hugely surprising. The Osa is one that we could definitely see as a standout, but it's definitely not unexpected given the type of play potential she's opened up, especially for basement attacks here on this map. You could say the same about second floor clears as well. She can be quite useful for that, so it makes perfect sense. One of our teams wanting to knock her out from play. We've got a very interesting lineup of operators for the Gaimin Gladiators here to start things out. We've got a Zero soft lock, a Nook coming in there as well. I think we saw another one for a second, but that was picked away. Quartz, I think, is just messing with us for the most part here. So we'll get a better idea of that once we get through the repick phase as well. What's going to stick and what's going to potentially get swapped out here.
All right. Well, now into Bank here for the very first time. Leftovers, considering a couple of different things, but finally resting on the Mozzie here for their defensive setup. No Oryx along for the ride, so won't have the Hatch play, unfortunately enough. But for Gaimin Gladiators, having quite a few different looks. Initially thinking about some more execute utility, but instead go for the Nook along with the Nook to be clear. Finka always going to be a solid choice. Or I just feel like he can get more done on the Nook in this position. Rudy also bringing the Thermite as well, which is a solid option. Potentially Jolton also having secondary hard breach here as well, and he will in fact. So have plenty of hard breach to go across the board to be able to get rid of hatches or anything that they so choose.
Ring is going to be the first player we'll take a look at here as these rounds get started. We'll see how he proceeds forward, as mainly he's going to be on intel duty, clearing out the lobby first off while the rest of the team works at getting access to square for themselves. Build up from that point and work themselves forward to clear out the rest of this map, and things are actually going to start a lot better this time for the Gaimin Gladiators. Maxley, I think, potentially tries to run or jump out, peeks into the stock window is what it looks like ended up happening. Will end up getting himself caught from there, so he'll be the first to fall. That is going to be as well the Vigil utility now removed. No longer can he trip up these drones and constantly cause delay in the roam clear for the Gladiators, which will be actually a pretty good thing in the long run here, because they did struggle with that from time to time on our previous map.
Well, phone call out here from the Doge, but won't be able to get too much done past the initial frag onto Maxley. But obviously, that's going to be good enough. All up until Adapt fires back, though. Down Barring, and oh no! Dexter's going to slip through the cracks. They don't find him. He's inside of open area. He's going to get a magazine put back inside of that Roni. He's lethal now. Those stuns out as well to try and help. The swing in from the EBR. Dexter flirting with death at this moment. Oh my, Jolton. Oh, stand still, everyone. Dexter, he's on a roll. Somebody's got to stop this man. He's good for 3, possibly 4 if they want to go for it. And Dexter, oh my God. What a way to open it up on Bank.
Dexter in his laboratory here in open area, shutting it all down, taking on absolutely no challengers in that position over by Office. So he's going to be able to pretty much single-handedly shut this attempt at attacking down from the Gladiators and leave the Leftovers once again in controlling position. Already up 1-0, obviously, from the previous matchup, and now up 1-0 in the match score as well. Gladiators not going to reattempt that site. They switch right away from it. Or, excuse me, the Leftovers obviously not going to be able to attempt that site as they win it. So they'll be switching upstairs into their 2F hold for this upcoming round.
That was a gross round there from Dexter, especially with the little amount of error that is allowed with that Roni. You have a very small mag capacity. A lot of those fights are dealt with inside of the entirety of said mag capacity, and Dexter is able to get 4 kills inside of open area, all off the back of some effort from downstairs from Adapt. That duo right there getting away with so much inside of that situation, especially for Dexter's sake, obviously. But, I mean, for the remainder of it, Gaimin Gladiators getting picked to pieces, simply cannot win out the fight, and no one swinging in time to really catch Dexter off guard. He was ready for every single engagement thrown at him.
So with the Leftovers still in dominating position, at least when it comes to the ability to gunfight here, that's going to open up some problems for the Gladiators in terms of how they try to get past that. The slow, straightforward clear in the last round is what we see attempted to minimal results, mainly due to what Dexter was able to accomplish. Curious to see if they're going to try something different here at all, or if they'll just wipe off the last round as circumstance of, hey, Dexter had a good round. Let's get, kind of just clear that from our minds and move forward, as I think they'll more than likely fall into that pattern of thought. Either way, though, already seeing them out on the board. We'll see how well they're able to clear out this defensive position, as there is going to be, I believe I see the silhouette correctly, the one player over by stock. If not, they're extended a little bit closer to the hallway inside of elevator here. Either way, Barring, as we go back to him, manages to spot out one of the yokai drones on the roof. That'll remove a pretty important piece of utility from Filthy's arsenal. Still has a second one pocketed, of course, and more than likely keeping it that way, waiting until later on in the round to be able to throw it out, or just has it hanging out on the ceiling a bit closer to the site to obviously be used in the event we go to a null timer where that denial can win the round.
Well, with that being said, Gladiators looking to try and work their way off of this north side of the building. They have Jolton actually waltzing inside instead of using the Gara hook on anything. Could potentially go for a hatch or something of that sort, though later on. We'll just have to see. Does have some bodies around this area, though, as I believe we just saw Leftovers. Remember, yes, indeed, over to his right-hand side. There'll be a player inside of Tellers. He's been hot-marked by a drone actually inside of that area. So now, Barring moving forward, almost has the flag as Dexter, then a very low HP. Barring trying to capitalize on the situation now, doesn't stop the pressure, and they'll finally be able to take him down, but they were decisive in that moment, and that's what made it to where Dexter wasn't able to do too much, even though he was given a second life there for just a split second.
So a bit of a slower start this time for the Leftovers, but at the same time, the slowness with which the Gladiators have found their opening kill is going to leave them with a bit of a lack for time right now. Butters, he's been caught out, though. Doesn't even realize the player's swinging up main stairs, or rather swinging up square stairs against him. Barring is going to be able to knock out Butters, and Barring will get another reboost as well here. Bring himself back up to a decent point. What's that? Presence detector hidden. Is able to juice himself forward a bit as we bring this down. Only one member remaining for the Leftovers after the rest of this execute works its way through. Adapt is the last player standing, although he's able to get away with one more pickup. There is an immediate exchange that sends him down. So the Gladiators come back with a bang in the second round here and are able to trade it out at a 1-1 scoreline.
Much more solid round there from the Gaimin Gladiators, not falling over themselves like we saw in the previous round, and able to pick off quite a few staples of the leftover defense, especially downstairs. We also saw Butters getting quite aggressive towards top square, but clearly ill-advised, as he thought he was all in his lonesome out there, but just simply didn't have the audio cue for the member running up square stairs because of that hell presence sensor on Nook. Makes it really hard to hear her moving around like that, and completely catches Butters off guard in that situation. Going to lead to a now newfound round here for Gaimin Gladiators, even though The last round, it looked like they could have potentially have gotten something past what happened with the whole the Dexter fiasco around the desks inside of open area. But that being said, now Gaimin Gladiators will be back out in the field momentarily here, and also looking to shift some gears. Not really thinking about bringing the Nook. Looks like Baron will immediately go back towards the Finca, and Jolton will be picking up the buck.
Attacker's objective is to locate a
So
bomb.
with both of our teams now spawned out, leftovers looking to course correct themselves after what occurred on the previous hold there. Back out into a first floor open area hold. This is the very same room, of course. We're back on round number 1. I mean, Dexter going absolutely crazy, so if he's able to thrive inside of his element yet again, things will probably work out well for him. But obviously, so much will change its state of play between now and then, just in the fact that we are actively focusing on that site rather than it being a bit of a kind of side room here to be fought over. Make it a little bit harder for Dexter to be able to make that same type of impact. And the Gaimin Gladiators, obviously, they need to kind of work up the courage to get themselves down there in the first place, which includes a pretty big sweep of the second floor hold. One we can see Arrow and Barring already working on doing there, as Arrow will be clearing things out from the lobby perspective. Barring, wasting no time, is already in through stock and getting ready to set himself up angle-wise to challenge some of these upstairs holds.
A lot of soft destruction going down, but not too much action past that. Oh, what a read from Maxley, though, I mean, it just seems to be game sense at that point, not a hopping or anything. An ill-advised step out of ATMs, and you're dead in the water, at least for Arrow's sake. Another potential frag, but it's actually coming towards him instead. Into the E2 area right past Beepers is he'll almost get naded out and taken out right under a default cam. Barring now has a camera back inside of the area here for E2, but luckily enough for Maxley, he'll be able to find it and take it down. Now him for an adapt will be able to hold on to the space for hopefully an extended period of time and trying to lay out more of this clock from Gaimin Gladiators.
Warren continuing to wait for opportunity to strike, but of course wants to make sure he has team support to do so, which he will now get from Jolton. There's the juice up coming in from the Finca. Warren, of course, will be first to make his way down from it. Does need to have Overwatch for the basement rotate as well in the event the leftovers had any tricks hidden down here. And there is one player, 2 players it looks like, in fact, judging from the silhouettes real quickly, that are potentially going to try and rotate their way either up into this site once the take attempt is started, or just kind of try to contribute from down below. It's what little effect I can have here. Fourth walking in, should have been able to take out at least one member of the defense. It looks like he did down Filthy, but is not going to be able to fully confirm it. That will fall to Barring instead after he goes over towards Beepers. A 1-for-1 change from that at the end of the day. Exchange, excuse me. Butters is going to be able to push it one step further for our defenders, and Dexter is only one check mark away. Now that Barring is the last player standing, Dexter will knock that one down too. Our defenders with the lead still at 2-1. So far, though, neither team able to get a consistent streak going. It's just been a seesaw back and forth for 3 rounds here so far.
Both of these teams with some solid looks across the map so far, though. Leftovers have been pretty active on this defense, and both of the successful defensive rounds that they've had have stemmed from that activeness. Looks like they'll more than likely roll on down to Locker CCTV. We'll see if we have the extended hold here again with Dexter back on the Mozzie. So maybe a recreation, maybe an Act 2 in effect here in a couple of moments, John. But round 4, this is really going to be, the backbreaker for how this is going to go. If Gaimin Gladiators is able to pick this up, then we have a pretty solid way. Even, if Leftovers does end up setting this forward too, Gaimin Gladiators still are going to have a lot of opportunities to try and recreate that on their defensive half. So this is kind of that in-between moment as to see who is really going to pull ahead.
So we continue to wait out and see what the Gladiators will bring to bear on this one. Already hiding a few sneaky choices in the operator department, as it's actually going to be a pretty big change up overall to their lineup here. Hard breach style has switched. This is now going to be a Thermite instead of the Ace. The Nook is back for Barring as well. The Dokkaebi has been swapped in for Arrow. So a lot of changes coming in here. A lot of very similar theming, but the operators themselves obviously going to be quite different, and that might trip up a few of our members of the Leftovers here when they come to face off against it. Either way, it's a very roam-heavy lineup from the Leftovers, so would be surprised if we end up with a heavy extension, or rather not a heavy extension from the basement. These guys definitely have mobility, more importantly, the kind of pre-placed utility to allow themselves to play so freely and not suffer the consequences too heftily if they were to die early in the round.
Of course, here on the north window, sledging these open and starting to adapt some new angles around the top area. As an extended one out towards the top of Marble, he'll see Maxley almost killing him. In fact, he slivers worth of HP separates him from the great beyond, and as in the current moment, doesn't look too hot for the leftovers. Dexter, though, in the exact same position that we had seen him in previously, half HP and ready for war. Barring will now start working his way in towards E2. Dexter's going to re-barricade Copier here, as he'll have to back off towards open area here momentarily. Ports, though, as with the rest of the team, still have this top floor hold working out for them, so they can potentially start to abuse a lot of the verticality inside of this area and could find themselves a Dexter on a pretty off angle that would end up being quite difficult for him to fight with his given HP.
8 prime for Barring, going to try to take out the player on stairs. I think they read into it, though. Maxley will be very low. I don't think directly from that nade. Going to be from another battle there. But either way, Barring feels his goal is accomplished. The nade has flushed out any presence that was previously here on the staircase. And now he's going to move in and try to group up quickly with a teammate. But Barring, or rather Dexter, I should say, ready for the challenge against Barring. Takes him down. Quartz exchanges that back. Dexter still in a pretty rough position here now at low HP and stuck in the corner by Open. A random bullet, it would appear at least, ends up coming through and knocking him down. And Jolton will be able to finish it off just a few seconds later. Between that exchange and the low HP from Maxley, things are going to look very delicate on the late round hold here from the leftovers, now that the Gladiators are finally ready to make that transition down to the basement.
Fortunately enough, though, this isn't looking too bad for the leftovers, depending on how this hold can continue to go. Butters, as well as Filthy, both with some very strong positioning that could influence these last couple of moments. Some big shots here from Butters. Is he going to be able to down it? He will. Some shots in from the E hatch, though, as a Nitro Cell will go out. Guns will go into Red Hall as well. He'll re-swing and be able to at least down another. It's up to Max to try and stay alive, but Jolton has him as well, as they can't get it done off of the site presence. A fantastic round here from GG.
The Gaimin Gladiators indeed able to brute force their way forward, tying us up again. The scoreline for them versus the leftovers here, and really breaching past not only the very well-placed defense from Dexter, is able to go off and pick himself up another nice find there, but also kind of limit that potential before we even reach the basement phase of that attack, if you will. So the Gaimin Gladiators a much better job that time, and this does mean that if we see a reattempt in the basement at any point in the next 2 rounds for the leftovers, then hey, we're going to get one. They may need to adjust the strategy just a tad in terms of pulling back the open area presence a bit earlier on into the round here, as unfortunately overexposing themselves. While it did do a good job of draining down the timer, it didn't drain it down enough, and obviously still left them at a pretty hefty disadvantage when the Gladiators were finally ready to work their way into the bottom floor.
Well, now leftovers looking to attempt the bottom floor yet again, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be nearly as extended, at least at the first look, as we'd seen the last time. A lot of these hatches being reinforced, but also Dexter feeling as though maybe the Thunderbird will be able to assist the team, as they've had a lot of situations where they've won out some initial engagements up against GG, but they've been worse for wear coming out on the tail end, and it would have been a very, very nice for them to have a Kona station laying around where they could heal themselves back up. And fortunately enough, now there is a character in which provides that, so Dexter will be shifting on over to that instead. GG have already cleared out the initial parts of Bank here inside of lobby. They found one of the members, I believe that's Maxley, sprinting across into Teller's office, and that'll be a telltale sign that the main lobby area is more than likely clear.
First check mark achieved here for the Gladiators. They start to move in and take some real control away from the leftovers. In the meanwhile, the leftovers have not peeled back on their aggression at all. In fact, they're keeping it exactly the same, with Maxley able to find out Barring at the beginning of this round. It's a massively impactful player from the Gladiators, but they can work perfectly fine without him. So not going to be a do-or-die loss here happening inside of the first minute as well. Gladiators have plenty of time to take a step back and adjust, although it certainly hurt seeing no trade show up there. That does mean that at least one member, possibly a few more following that that up from the leftovers are going to be able to fall back and reattain their basement positions, meaning that the Gladiators overall won't have a chance to trade that out until they get into the site.
Oh, Arrow with a solid engagement. Fortunately enough for both of the members. No bullets really connecting and dealing any damage. Chorus, though, will take some damage on the other end of the building as he will finally go down to Butters. Finally, some info out here from Arrow. So pre-fire, but he's missing his mark, trying to see if the potential member would just move and run into the bullets, but obviously not the case. Now it's all down to Rudy as the remaining members are all just getting gunned down, and Dexter will be able to trade it out. It just seems as though the leftovers are able to play it as more of a team effort, with these initial picks constantly going their way, and Gaimin Gladiators not able to try and make it back into the round in any successful way.
Yeah, the Gaimin Gladiators right there just kind of throwing themselves at it, it seemed, wanting to take that team fight versus the leftovers inside of open area, and unfortunately giving up far too much as a result of it. No control, no one able to call that off early enough, and as a result, as you said, just kind of trading it towards a win there, giving them what could become the lead at halftime, but they are going to need to prime together one more round to do so, a feat that neither them nor the Gaimin Gladiators have successfully been able to accomplish so far here. It's been back and forth the entire time and could very well end up that way at a 3-3 scoreline. Leftovers will return to open area for their final defense, as well the Gaimin Gladiators at least showing us the initially very similar lineup to what we've had in the past, and it's even going to stay that way too, despite the changes coming in right now. Arrow back over. It's going to add those Argus cameras into the utility lineup. We will get a sledge as well for Courts. Kind of a requirement here, just because we are going to be in open areas. So we'll see that changed, and actually switching it around still. We'll see if Courts stays on that, because he's flipped over a few times, but more than likely, yeah, going to end up on the sledge. That's indeed what ends up being the case. They even have Jolton go to the buck for a nice backup here.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options you can choose for soft breach as long as you choose sledge. It's kind of like, have you ever heard of the phrase where it's you can choose any color as long as it's black? It's literally the same thing. It's like, if you're not bringing sledge, then I don't really know what you're doing, especially when it comes to verticality. One of the best in the business, especially when it comes to the top-down perspective, is he's able to break, and I'm not even joking here, 25 things with his sledgehammer until you are not allowed to use it anymore. Jolton only adds to that equation here with the skeleton key, but the beauty of that skeleton key is not only does he have to do it from the top-down perspective, but he can also go down-up, which is really the only thing that Buck is able to do over the other soft breaches. It's a really, really solid way of taking a lot of maps. It's something that we see quite often on a map like Kafe. Sometimes you can see it on Bank and other maps that do have some softer destruction between floors to try and influence some of the players inside of some of these harder to reach positions if one of the other floors is a little bit softer. So we'll have to see what they want to try and use this for. Jolton is going to have the secondary hard breach utility, as Quartz is going to get the first big pick onto Dexter. And that's really what you want to see out of Gladiators at the current moment, as these early round engagements have been so hard fought by both teams, but have also seemingly been the decider.
Dexter has been kind of the power player, too, that we've been looking for to take some of these early fights, and more importantly, win them. But he's not the only one that's successfully been able to accomplish it. Maxley has pulled it off a few times, and even Butters, as we saw previously, more so on the attacking side for our last map, but has also shown to be able to stand on his own, obviously, even outside of this game. Butters having quite a bit of history there. Maxley being found out by an Argus cam. I think they may have got a split second of vision on it there, so they may be aware of Max's position, and either way are probably going to assume that there is something closer to Tellers from how quickly it was shot out. Very well-timed shot there from Max, a little bit early on trying to catch the peak from Arrow. He is still going to try to move forward, but it's actually going to be barring from the backside of Tellers. It's able to catch him out. He goes down. Butters immediately exchanging it from his stairs position, and Adapt is still alive, so there's a chance to bring him back up. Butters, I think, just going for a quick check before he hard commits to the revive, and indeed will bring Adapt back from the grave. It needs to keep him alive is the problem, and this cross is where things get dangerous, especially because of the beepers next to it. Arrow can't necessarily lock in, and I'm not sure if that was an intentional drop, but if not, very unfortunate, as he could have very well had a kill against Butters, still keeping that top position.
Butters is still looking for it. He's just continually challenging here on Marble. And yes, the kills are definitely a necessity at this point. But at what cost? Adapt. He's able to get 3. Oh, no. He needed one more bullet on Quartz there at the tail end as well. It just looked over the HP bar. But it was so very close just before Jolton hops in with the skeleton key. And we'll tie things up here on Bank.
So, Bank will remain a mystery in terms of who our true leader is going to be. Neither team can take the edge away from it as of halftime here. The leftovers as well, now going to be thrusted onto the attacking side, but this is where things potentially do get a little bit more dangerous here, as this is the side where they really took over back on Kafe. And like I said before, the early round on this map, yeah, plays a bit differently, a lot more freedom to roam, but once our attacking team has that initial control and the capability to at least set themselves up for an execute, things play out very much the same way. So as long as the leftovers are able to get a handle on that early round, the Gaimin Gladiators won't necessarily have a whole lot to fall back on to be able to win things inside of an extended site fight, other than the map geometry and how that will generally favor them now.
Well, Zofia and Ace being adapted into the lineup here for the leftovers, Gaimin Gladiators as well, with 4 changes inside of the prep phase of their own, or rather the pick phase, as they will be changing up the lineup entirely, thinking that, well, maybe we should try something a little bit different up against the leftovers, and it'll more than likely go off without a hitch if it is at least looking like what it's looking like. We have some pretty cool tidbits here. Not only the castle barricades, obviously, around the area to make it a little bit more complex to get through this mid-floor, but also the Tachanka that not only applies a lot of soft destruction for the defense, but also has so many fire grenades to be able to prevent plant.
Leftovers and the rest of the Gladiators here continue to passively face off against each other. No one wanting to swing directly into contest just yet. The leftovers as well, starting to take those little bits of control away from our defenders here as they inch their way into areas like lobby and upstairs square, getting themselves ready to clear out this extended game, which is going to be quite complicated from the Gladiators. In fact, not only do we have first floor presence, as you were seeing from the leftovers in the previous half, but even the second floor, they've seen a player or two from the Gladiators take up the mantle here. They're going to be looking to delay to the most extreme extent. I do believe the second floor player has been flushed down onto our first floor, but we'll get better confirmation of that in a moment, and it does appear as though that is certainly the case. Arrow and Jolt, along with Quartz, all now taking control of just the first floor, giving Rudy and I believe one more to fend things off our basement position. Leftovers have them all in a box. Now they're going to find a way to execute them before they find a way to scurry out and back to the relative safety of the site, all while keeping a good eye on the clock as well.
Nothing just yet, minus Adapt now hopping inside. He'll be able to claim the first kill on to Jolton. Quartz, though, will quickly fire back. It's the Thermite of all characters to try and make the aggressive play, and he's traded out at a minimum. But now with very minimal time, and as you said, clock management going to be quite important coming into this. Leftovers have to be decisive about their next move, but the problem is now they're starting to bleed bodies. Dexter's going to go down as well, and Quartz will bring it one step further. Filthy will also falter. Butters and Maxley, the only 2 remaining here with a minute left. They have to worry about some presence at the bottom of square at the current moment, as well as Butters is trying to manage his own problems. So both of them and their own disjointed issues. Butters will be able to eventually work over towards Archives, but so many angles to try and work with inside of the open area space as well. And that's not even past what they see here for the kitchen wall. Still can't try and push themselves forward either. Quartz holding things down, but he'll finally get gunned down from Butters, who has a 6th sense for his location.
3 still remain at full HP as well for the Gaimin Gladiators here, so Butters as well as Max have to be so careful about the way they proceed. You're only just now seeing that, I believe it's going to be, yeah, indeed, canister from the other side begin to burn out from Rudy. Max realizes that it is indeed coming from the Tachanka, so he forces the issue, gets himself to the inside, at least starts the plant process. Butters will do the same thing. He's going to get found out by the crosses from Rudy, though. Too far exposed. They'll continue to volley in shots as Max has the lineup to take out Rudy, but is unable to land it. He is knocked out far too quickly, and the retake is immediately maintained by the Gladiators. They're going to be able to win out this first round and bring themselves back into it now as they take the lead away 4-3.
It was a bang-up job there from the Gaimin Gladiators as that defense went off without a hitch, past the plant that was allowed from Maxley, but it was a valiant effort at the end of the day from him, not only being able to get the kills, but also being able to get the plant down, running through the fire and flames, as we love to say on the casting desk, in order to get that done. But Doesn't even really matter at the end of the day, as Gaimin Gladiators shut it down with an effort of their own. Leftovers just simply not able to hold a candle to their flame, and now 4-3 score line. Gaimin Gladiators head towards open area. This site quite unique when it comes to Bank as well as quite a few other of the maps that we have available in Rainbow Six Siege competitive at the current moment, as it's one of the only sites where you can drop into the hatch or drop into the site rather, as well as drop out of it, which is a pretty interesting thing, as you can play the map in some pretty cool ways with the way that you can just play the map pressure by making your rotations or what have you. The big thing is that they're not going to have somebody like Oryx who's just going to jump immediately at hatches and can come in like small office or anything like that, so Leftovers won't have to worry about that too much at the end of the day. But past that, they will have to worry about Azami working her way in for Rudy.
Yep, Rudy is going to be bringing those into the fold here. You can already see blocking off the kind of hard point that we see, or what would have been the hard point for the Leftovers players to pre-fire into as they hop into break room. It's no longer going to be the case there, obviously. And a little bit of additional support being deployed towards the open area players here, too. Leftovers will have to be cognizant of that as they begin to take control of the map. Already seeing some upstairs square control fall under them, as the Gladiators do not have much resistance in this area of the map, not that we necessarily expect it. Instead, it's going to be the usual positions such as the inside of Janitor, the elevator, bank, even the stairs too, a bit more heavily contested by the Gladiators here as they try to fend off the pressure from the Leftovers.
Well, working in quickly now is the Leftovers. Drones out as well as breaching charges on wall. Ready for the next step of the mission is the offensive unit. As Dexter will be moving his way in through ATMs. Though someone's around elevator, a quick execution of arrows will hop immediately upstairs. Has some footprints into his left, but worried about the angle initially, and why wouldn't you be? You don't know who could be around this space and potentially try and take you down. Now it's going to be a tracking of the Vigil that they'll discover is indeed lower on the main stairwell here. I'll force barring back a little bit farther here inside of this situation. Dexter trying to work his way forward now, but it's actually Maxley take down Jolt, and his Leftovers are looking for the equalizer.
See if they can get it. A little over half the round to go, and they've already made great progress here with virtually 0 damage sustained by any of their players also. Barring position to try and go for an aggressive swing, although I don't believe he's got much sitting on the other side at this point here. We're going to see at least one member on rappel, but that's not really actionable for Barring at this point here. He has to go all the way up, get himself around the corner on the angle, and then maybe he can cut these players off. But no, Filthy and Adapt are far too ahead of this. They're going to be able to read directly into that. Barring will be found out. Quartz has a little bit of a better go of it, as he's got the additional support of being able to hide behind the kitchenette on the inside of office there. Rudy will be able to strike true as well. So this game and this round are not done just yet here. The Leftovers, well, yes, they had a great start. The follow-up to get themselves into the site is looking a little bit rough here. Now that both players on the Gaimin Gladiators side have found kills, though, their positions are revealed. Leftovers members are going to be in a better position to try and respond to that, especially now that they're constantly going to be re-droning it and reconfirming that once again. Quartz finally comes out from behind the relative safety of the Azami barricade. Filthy will still take a lot of heat from that. Rudy tries support, but the cutoff is here. Maxley has arrived from the inside of Small, leaving just Quartz in the fight, and he can't sustain for that long either. One more kill falls into the favor of the Leftovers, and they pick up this round, tying us again at a 4-4 scoreline.
They do not want to let Bank slip through the cracks. They are fighting so hard to stay in contention, and they'll pick up that round as well. Great effort there from Leftovers, but now with that equalizer, we're back to a stalemate between these two. Staff room open area going to be selected yet again for GG. And I mean, I really don't know what the adaptation is going to look like here for them. I mean, the initial part of the round was so punishing for GG. Leftovers getting away with just a little bit too much there, making it quite hard for them to fight going into the later parts of the round. But for Leftovers, it seems as though, again, these opening engagements, if they're able to get them, the round is golden. It's a golden goose. But, if these opening engagements end up going the way of Gaimin Gladiators, it's just not the same ordeal. This has been the biggest influence that we've really seen thus far on this map, is these first bloods in which team is able to decisively take them.
10 seconds to go.
So, for our Gaimin Gladiators here, potentially faced with maybe losing the lead here yet again if they don't keep themselves on the seesaw. If they do, everything's A-okay. But like I said before, this is the half where leftovers really seem to have that extra brewing of confidence as well as just consistency to clear out some of these defensive holds. It's looking like, however, the extra real estate to roam around might have given the Gladiators that little bit of a boost they need to stay competitive inside of this half as well, so we could be in for a real marathon here to find a winner on bank. And that's before, of course, we get ready to go to our third map, should the Gladiators be able to win this and tie up the series at 1-1. Slow clear first off for the leftovers, even fully checking the ATM entryway here to make sure that no one from the Gladiators had snuck into it. He'll continue to do that throughout the rest of this lobby area. As the leftovers will use this as their kind of opening volley to get themselves in. They'll swing towards this, take control quite easily. He'll be able to work pretty much from anywhere on the map. Just a springboard position being set up here, and more than likely going to have to use this spot to clear out the upstairs hold, but they failed to pay attention to this small breach that's been made over on the staircase. In fact, 2 kills goes their way. The adrenal surge actually locks in the death of that one player too. He then stands up back into the POV of the breach and allows for that player to confirm it. So that's one of the few times the Finca utility there is actually going to end up being a bit of a bad thing, as the res comes in a bit too prematurely. That player was not at a dodge just yet for when they would stand up.
Yeah, very unfortunate circumstances, and you could say that again about the situation that Leftovers has been left in. Trying to see if potentially any of the GG members will just give up their lives to the LMG sitting inside of lobby, but obviously not the case. Filthy not having the hottest game thus far either, as he's going to begin working the top floor here with the sledgehammer. Butters will continue to hold down the main lobby with Adapt, and Butters, or rather Filthy, upstairs continually holding things down. Again, this is going to be an open area offense here, so a few different things that they need to be able to clear out and take care of before they move on downstairs. They're more than likely looking to arrive on the shores of the bottom of Square in order to get the kitchen wall open.
Continuing to see the round come down to its final minute of play. The Gaimin Gladiators have fallen back. No real reason for them to keep their extensions alive, seeing it's gone down to a 5v3. It's time to fall back, let the remaining members of the leftovers flounder. They don't have a strong capability to get themselves towards the inside, even as you can see, we try to line up over here to the colors. There's still zombie barricades sitting in the way. The first trade shows up from Butters, but they can be consistent now, or do the Gladiators immediately start to strike back? And this is found from the back of Blue Stairs, although not going to be left in play for all that long. Rudy will back away from it a bit more actively against the breach. They try to stop and do not succeed in stopping the thermite from being opened, and with that opening, Adapt is able to find the equalizing kill. Filthy, though, exposed to Jolton. He's going to be able to strike not just once, but twice here, finding another pickup. Rudy, I think, helping him out, actually making sure that he eliminates Adapt, and Butter is the last one standing as well. Follows the player behind the break room desk, moving around over to our defenders and allowing them to keep temporary control over the lead.
It's like we were talking about, John. These opening engagements have so much influence as to how these rounds have been going, and yet again, it will show its face. Gaimin Gladiators taking their round after 2 huge picks inside of the opening minute that Leftovers could never reconcile with. It was just too hard of a situation for them, and obviously, I mean, there's really not much you really can do if Gaimin Gladiators are just going to play, closer to sight and really play out for those trades, past just really bullying them in that situation. Just be mechanically gifted, I guess, and try and get one over on them that way. But obviously, GG has some shooters of their own, as it's been working out pretty well, especially for Colt, who's currently, or Colts, rather Courts, who is currently 10-5.
A few final pieces of the setup coming in here for the Gladiators, as they are now upstairs in their second floor hold, been forced into it. I believe we've seen them have a gauntlet here, locking away 2 of the sites they would want to pick into. The Leftovers now forced to attack this one, but probably a little bit okay with that, given what it's going to limit in terms of the options the defenders have to get aggressive against this clear from the Leftovers. So for Max, the other members of the Leftovers, we got them spawned out and on the field. They're going to begin their punt, taking the initial control now, and the drones in through electrical begin to investigate what the square hold looks like.
Dexter potentially going for a quick play here into server. He'll drone out the stacks at the back end here. More to worry about, but it's on the other side of the map as Barring takes down Butters, and that's going to be the Finca gone so very early here. That's a pick at like 226. No longer having access to that LMG or those adrenal surges. Everyone's health will be here to stay now on the offensive side. Dexter seeing if he could potentially get a freebie to rotate in through small office, and well, there's a potential buyer here as well. And obviously not when it comes to the upstairs presence. It's going to be Arrow, who's currently around the area. Saw the hatch open up, and this could be the freebie I was looking for. And yes, indeed, it will be. Sprints back. And there's another hostile in the area. Still potentially worry about this. There's one upstairs as well. Just waiting for this hatch to be peaked. Dexter knows that somebody could potentially get antsy here as Jolton will continue to try and hold things down inside of Janitor.
Dexter trying to see if he can coax one of those players to re-peek the hatch again. Won't work, as that player is long gone now. So the leftovers still sit without a necessarily straightforward option to get themselves back in control of the player advantage. It leaves Jolton obviously very, very low at a sliver of HP, but the leftovers won't have intel necessarily on just how low he is, and Jolton's been safely tucked away, as you can see, in meeting rooms, so going to be really difficult to knock him out regardless. Adapt is tired of waiting, so he's going to position this thermite charge and begin to open up options to move on to the site and begin planting, of course, right after that. For Filthy and some of the other players, though, they still wait. They're sitting back to see if they can catch one of the members of the Gladiators moving out from position, but it's not looking like we're going to get that at this point here. Everybody else from the leftovers still sitting back. They're on drones still, or just waiting for a member of the Gladiators to be found. And we've already seen at least once from the previous map how this will not work for the leftovers here. The Gladiators, of course, playing into it quite passively now, are going to look to just run this clock down. I think the leftovers have finally realized it. They're going to begin to throw a bit of aggression at themselves.
Well, Rudy, a nice shot there into E3. It will at least mitigate some of the damage, stop the bleeding, but leftovers, they've been able to achieve a lot in this round. This plant now seemingly capable of going down, especially with Filthy on the long angle. Adapt will start the long process. The longest 7 seconds of his life is Filthy. Will be able to cover the site and make it so difficult for Gaimin Gladiators to win the round. Leftovers, this teeter-totter continues on as they'll lock us into 5-5.
That's why you see such a slow build-up there for the leftovers and in general for these types of attacks here. They don't necessarily want to move the players on rappel off those positions because it's some of the best ones you can have to try and set yourself up for punishing the movements that the defenders are eventually going to have to make. It just takes a while, it seems, for the leftovers to get their stairs players up on top and into a position where they can truly make impact there. So that was the cause of delay. That was leaving us with a bit of a tepid scenario there for the leftovers in terms of whether they were going to be able to successfully make their way into the site or not. But they get it done. They're able to clean things out. Now they lock us in, as you said, at another 5-5 scoreline. The teeter-totter goes on. For the Gaimin Gladiators, they're going to look to make the big difference out once again here with their basement defense. That would secure a 6 out of 7 rounds here. As we're seeing Rudy pretty quickly creatively reconstruct things here on these walls.
You know, when Tachanka got his change, the first thing I did is I started up a private lobby. I went into Villa, and I just started seeing how many rotations I could potentially make before I ran out of bullets. Do you want to know how many I made, John?
5 seconds left.
I made 20 rotations. That's how many rotations I made around the building before I ran out of bullets. This gun is literally insane. Look at how many bullets he still has and realize what he did downstairs. It is actually incredible what you're able to achieve with that LMG when it comes to soft destruction. And that was kind of the potential that I saw with it initially is like once, you know, high tier level players, professional level players, whatever you want to call them, get used to playing around that gun and what it's capable of on like for deconstruction and everything. You're going to see some crazy stuff like that where every single bullet just like chips out a piece of a wall. And by the end of it, they still have like 150 bullets left to play with. It's some truly incredible stuff. But past that, as we were talking about before, everything all tied up here. And Dexter, he's creeping in, but this time no Nook. Those ones around the bottom of square, but this could be the sneakiest of all kills, and it wouldn't even require the Hell Presence sensor. It'll be the secondary breaching charge to be able to get the castle barricade open here. LMG will be able to assist them as they continue to open up a lot of these walls. Adapt now has some wall destruction to do of his own for this single panel, as this looks to be the battleground for the moment in between these two.
All avenues have been opened up for the leftovers to continue their assault and at least attempt to bait out the utility. You're going to notice, of course, it's only Rudy's incendiaries that can fend this off from range here. Probably have a couple of nitros as well, and indeed we do. We'll get a better idea of who still has those in pocket in a moment. But trying to bait out the large majority of Tachanka's utility right now plays a little bit differently, as obviously there's a larger amount of it, but it doesn't last nearly as long either. So it's a more constant process of stepping forward, baiting the plant, stepping back when the incendiary comes down. So you'll see Adapt inch his way forward into his first plant position now, and he'll get towards it. The nitro's out, but it's going to be a little bit too late on the throw there, unfortunately. Our attacker sees that coming from a mile away and is able to get themselves out of it. Dexter as well, going 2 for 2 here on peaks from the back of the server wall. Quartz is able to trade that back, and so far, no trade against him just yet, but Butters has found additional pickup against Arrow, and with Barring now going down, there is no time left here. Quartz has to get aggressive, and he does get one more going for his troubles, but Dexter, solid as a rock behind that server bank, trades it right back into the control of our attackers here. It is going to be the Leftovers, pushing the envelope up to 6 first, as they have one opportunity here to close it down in regulation and end the series along with it.
Such decisive gameplay out of Leftovers, especially inside that last round. They know exactly what they want. They want the server plant, and they go for it immediately, setting things up not only inside of Electrical Room, but also have the angle worried, or at least being checked about at the top of Square, just to make sure that nobody can rotate in late and try and take out anyone inside of server. Didn't require much ground, but it was a successful round either way for Leftovers. And now having the potential to close out the entire series here within the next 5 minutes.
Indeed, going to look to do so. However, like we just mentioned, only the one opportunity to do it inside of regulation here. Will need to see them put in a bit more effort if the Gladiators are able to fend things off here in open area for yet another occurrence. Leftovers certainly have a task in front of them, as this is going to be the most open sites the Gladiators have to play into. No pun intended on that one. Just gives them a lot of freedom to rotate both upstairs and all across the first floor as well. So there is an endless number of ways that the Leftovers can get tripped up upon their initial entry, leaving the Gladiators with the true right to figure out how the rest of this round is going to go, if they can swing it down to a 5v4 or something better than that here at the beginning of this round.
Looks like they want to try and open this up in a very similar circumstance to what we had seen previously. We'll have Dexter poised to try and work his way into lobby with the IMAX, or rather INOX. A little bit of a different take there. I don't know exactly how big that display is inside of his helmet, but probably not that big, I would assume. As he'll be more than likely looking for some info inside of the main lobby here momentarily. He'll at least get a read onto the position upstairs at the far end near Square, but it's going to be Maxley to try and capitalize on this situation now. Some solid drones up and in around that area, but it'll be Quartz instead to take down one, and nobody, not a singular bullet, well, actually one, will be sent his way from ATMs. As Leftovers now losing out on one of the most important pieces to their early round.
Arrow already going low. Filthy struggling similarly, however, as he tries to make an entry known from the backside of Teller's. Not going to be able to find it, but Filthy's life has been saved. However, it's all for naught, it seems, right now for the Leftovers. They just cannot find a winning engagement. Max going down low as well. Butters brought down to a sliver of HP, unable to take out his opponent, and the same for his opponent, unable to find him here as well. Just no one going down, but a lot of damage being dished out by both sides.
I have no idea how either one of them made it through that. That railing is the MVP of that engagement, because both of them, or at least one of them, should have most definitely been dead. But now the Leftovers, it's looking as though they're the ones to fall in this round. Gaimin Gladiators finally grasping a hold of themselves and trying to force us to overtime. Default cam will get rid of by Butters here inside of E2. Has to worry about somebody potentially swinging the door. Don't exactly know about his frag situation here, but Max will drop in. He knows where one is inside of open area, but now he's in hot water himself. We'll drop back down to the next hatch here. Nice shots here from Butters as he'll continue to try and maintain around E2, but he'll fall off as well. They're looking to make a solid rotation, but it seems as though Barring has got them completely off guard. Filthy now trying to push forward. He'll pre-fire into copiers. They're coming for him, and they're coming for him in the moment. Quartz with 2 big kills. The Barry 9 sings, and it'll find 2 bodies from the offense. We're going to overtime.
So overtime comes into play. It's our first one of the day here, actually, on the Bravo stream. So fun to finally get it. The tail end of our matchup here. Our potential for a third map, by the way, is still alive and well. If we end up seeing the Gladiators top things out here in overtime. They do, however, have the 2 attacking rounds, which does not favor them in terms of the way they've been playing so far for this series. But on this map, it's gone 3-3 on both ends, so could end up favoring either one of our teams realistically here. We have to watch the rounds to see how it all plays out, and thankfully you don't have to wait very long to get ourselves into the round. Here we go. Find out if indeed the leftovers can bounce back for themselves.
Well, leftovers now having what could possibly be the favorable side. Kind of hard to say at the current moment with what we've been experiencing between these two teams. But at least for their sake, a lot of the big plays coming on this side of the coin. So could have some very powerful rounds ahead of us that could push them over the edge, just make the situation a little bit too difficult for GG to be able to work their way through. Adapt will add some more mute jammers to this mid floor. As you can see, this is a strategy that's quite built up around getting rid of a lot of the info game coming in from Gaimin Gladiators, as they will now make it out and on to the field, barring the onto the Nook here. Try and sneak in and attempt to get some frags on some unsuspecting defensemen.
So we have the initial clears coming out from the Gladiators. Does look like they want to play around to potentially get access to Garage early on here. As we can see a few drones sneaking down there. Not a huge emphasis on it, though. It's just going to be barring, more than likely going for a solo play. And Dexter as well, trying to make a hop out for himself. Oh my goodness, how did he get away with that? Dexter hops out, I'm going to assume from square balcony, makes his run back down over like the banister, takes out a player,
still
and then
outside
falls
there,
back before that.
Oh,
We had another
Rudy,
one as
wait.
well. Rudy finally getting Max here as well. There's absolute chaos right now. Yeah.
Oh my god, I didn't even realize he killed 2 people. What was oh yeah, that's too much. That's way too much. You know, 1 was enough, I think. And honestly, 1 was too much, if I'm being real. But fortunately enough, barring, he's been able to mitigate the damage. Make it a 3 versus 3 now. Barring, now with the position here inside of Garage, they'll have to be really aware as to what he can potentially get done here. He will continue to push this drone forward inside of Garage Courts, though. Now making his way inside, just giving Rudy some space to be able to get these hatches open. They still have a lot of time to try and break down this site. But what seemingly was a leftovers round initially has quickly became an equal playing field in between these two with some solid positioning by the offense. Oh, but Adapt.
Adapt, pick up the next one. Yep, here for the members of the leftovers. They bring it down to a 3v2. Barring still has his powerful position to play from, though, just at the entrance towards Garage. He's nearly cut off on it. He's got to be a little careful, but you can see the damage he's able to pull off as he nearly finds the trade against Adapt. Nade goes in. May very well find out one of the defender's positions, but no. A little bit too light, unfortunately, on the toss. The second one does yield some damage against Filthy, but nothing really to write home about. Just a bullet's worth. Pretty much to simplify things, is Barring now has run out of patience. He's going to have the confidence to move forward. Spots Butters inside of the gold bar's position too, and takes down Filthy. Barring with a huge play. He might not have won the round, but he could have very well set up Courts to clutch it, as he only needs 1 bullet in each of these players to win it. Not expecting any resistance on the cross here, and he's actually surprisingly allowed to go through with it. Here's the plant opportunity for him. He's got to watch out for Adept, though, playing in the back of the elevator banks. He apparently doesn't catch this swing out, and there we go. Leftovers are too scared of themselves to make the play happen. Courts is going to be allowed to go out. He knocks out the first player, missed the shots onto Adept, so has not been able to eliminate him just yet. But Adept as well, firing at the wind to try and bait something out of Courts. It will not happen. Courts shuts it down, and instead we are going to end up with a surprise victory coming in here to start out overtime.
GG with the clutch factor in overtime, and now onto the defensive side. Leftovers making a hot streak run there on their offensive side of, I get it, 2 rounds back, or rather back to back. But it's not that, I get it, it's not that long of a streak, but still, it's something to look at in comparison to what we had seen from Gaimin Gladiators, going back and forth constantly on their offensive side. They're able to secure that round. So leftovers with a big potential to pick up this one and force us to max OT here on Bank. But what we've seen from a couple of these defenses from Gaimin Gladiators, it really just tends to be what these opening engagements are like. And if it starts to go down to that 5 versus 3 with the defense up, I'm really not trusting Leftovers in the current moment to win out that situation, but can always prove us wrong as they do have the opportunity right now to try and force this into a max OT situation.
It's going to go back over into the open area hold 2, which is the site that the Gladiators have had a lot of success attempting to maintain here, mainly just because of the Leftovers struggling to get a clean entry for themselves. And even when they do, normally someone from the Gladiators is able to play from an unexpected corner or just a weird position and catch too many members of the Leftovers off guard. The clears from them here have been sloppy and a lot of mistakes made, so as a result, it's looking good here for the Gladiators to get themselves the quick closeout inside of overtime. A 2-0 victory for them there, but only a 1-1 in the series, needing our third and final map to close it down. But at the same time, the Leftovers, with 2 of their own rounds, they can swing it back the other way and still end the series here and now. So we will see if they're going to be able to accomplish it, as Dexter starts us off here by moving into the front lobby office. Starting to take some control there. Had a nicely pre-placed drone as well. Isn't going to spot out too much actionable intel just yet. That may change, though, as we get a little bit deeper into the round.
Attackers have located a bomb.
Well, you can clearly see Leftovers a little more concerned about the info game coming into this round, making sure to measure twice and cut once. Filthy with the potential to swing in for the top floor, but both of them just managing these northern windows for the time being. Not much presence here from the defense, all except for around Marble Staircase. Arrow, as well as one other member of GG, holding this down for a time. Some drones around the area and just drop off after being discovered by that drone and knowing that more than likely some presence will come in from the northern windows. Dexter now with a quick move upstairs. He'll have some pretty hot information here if he's able to get there in time. Should be looking for the yellow footprints, and he'll grab them. That would be better than the greens. Obviously, the red ones being the best, as you get multitude of pings off of those, but still some very solid information coming off of the yellow ping.
No kills for either team just yet, but we are coming down to the wire as we go past the halfway point of the round here. Leftovers being much more cautious than we've seen on previous engagements from this squad, and with good reason too, given that they're about to lose the map. Otter is ready to swing himself in towards Tellers here, clearing it out. Won't find any resistance from the Gladiators' side, and that same will apply to Archives on the other end of this. Gladiators just continuing to play this in the same fashion that they have been doing, going back to regulation on this very same site. But despite that, Filthy opening up some top-down control. This is the method of attack we have not seen the Leftovers utilize too heavily as of yet. Here they've generally been going for horizontal attacks only, so considering that, there's going to be a little bit of an extra facet that Filthy will add to this recipe to hopefully allow them to get better access this time. But so far, not yielding a whole lot, except for maybe shuffling a few of the defenders out of their original position. Nade dump quickly thrown in from Butters, but it's going to be Adapt that finds the opening pick against Barring. Been hunting him down for some time as well, so good to see they finally accomplished that. This breach is far too small, but Maxley works out here as a bit of a bait to allow for Butters to get another kill. He's going to be able to take down Arrow. Dexter knocked out a player as well, but here comes Jolton on the flank. This could be a thorn in the side of the plan as they try to go for it here, working himself back into the site, but no, Dexter's able to take down both of them, and the Leftovers hold on for one final round to still potentially end this 2-0.
Some big boy plays from the Leftovers. This will be kicked back over to the defensive side. It's an offensive-sided bank here in overtime. The teeter-totter continues on, but it seems like there's only one thing that is inevitable inside of these last 2 rounds. We'll see if that potentially works its way into this last round now, round 15 on the board. Haven't seen it in some time. You and I haven't seen it in a handful of weeks here, as the last time you and I were working was the Charlotte Majors, so always fun to have a max OT game, as these last rounds can always go off with a very explosive flourish. So for Dexter especially, he is hoping to end it all right now, because what an effort him and especially Quartz from Gaimin Gladiators have put in on this map, as they both have 19 as well as 18 kills respectively.
Well, let's see if either one of them can lead their team to victory now. Dexter as well as Courts on the other side have been going neck and neck at each other this entire game, and only one can come out on top. At the moment, the leftovers have the edge to end it here and now. For the Gladiators, it would simply reset our counter once again and send us over to a third and final map. So we'll see if they can finally push us to an endpoint, or if it will only extend things even further. Jolton and the rest of the Gladiators now out and spawn, so we'll see what type of early advances they will look to make against what is going to be actually a basement hold from the leftovers as well here. So falling back into that one after they fell short on the first attempt, they are re-attempting it yet again here. So that does give the Gladiators a little bit of hope, as they simply need to repeat their same successes and find, hopefully, that one single round that they need. The leftovers, though, are bringing a little bit of a different curve to this one. They're being much more out and about, specifically on the first floor, so going to be trying to get in the way of this opening clear attempt from the Gladiators. We can already see Jolton getting in position to try and catch a few of these guys as he manages to knock away the railing there for himself, just to make an easier transition down when the time comes for that.
Well, Jolton, I will begin running things out on this top for himself around Marble. Adapt now, trying to make the play up towards Spiral. Dexter, is it going to be another round like we saw earlier in Bank? Oh, Adapt. I don't believe he meant to shoot right there, but he might be okay in this situation. A player inside his stock, he's going to be so very close on this. He's got one, and they're already getting away with a little bit too much. Big fight here for Courts as he's able to at least slow it down a little bit, but they still have to worry about this man advantage. Oh, but that's going to be
Barring
so easily handled with Barring coming in and taking this.
Barring's been such a problem here for the leftovers. So cool, calm, and collected inside of these more chaotic scenarios here. And always one of the ones to seemingly bring it back. Doesn't have the stats like we've been seeing from Courts. Barring definitely one of the highlights for this team inside of not only this map, but this matchup. He's pulling off a lot of the same stuff in our previous map. Has left the leftovers a little bit worse for wear here, as they have really no choice but to fall back into the depths of their sight. But the Gaimin Gladiators don't seem fully convinced that they've done so just yet, as you can see them being very cautious of things like blue stairs, watching for any re-aggression. They've been shaken a little bit here, and that's going to cost them time that they may not necessarily have. Okay for the time being, at a little under now 50 seconds to play out here. As long as they continue to move towards the site without any further delay, they should be good. But as you guys are seeing, the Toxic Babes only just now starting to flush their way in. We do also have the Kona stations for the 3 remaining defenders to use a bit deeper into the site here as well, so they can reboost themselves. First Toxic Babe is gone. Second one should be teed up here pretty quickly, but Barring doesn't want to let that happen. He pushes forward, manages to take down Butters. Maxley trades that back, though. A bit of a risk taken. However, it might work out for the Gladiators as Courts has the shots from up on top, and he's going to be able to shut this down for the Gladiators and send us on to a third map.
Such a strong finish there from the Gaimin Gladiators. What a valiant push through the smoke. Don't know if it was necessarily going to work out at first, but obviously that last second angle there from the red hatch able to make things work, as it's an even trade out inside of the situation initially, but obviously with the man advantage just playing way too handedly into GG's favor. Very well done from them. And now it's time for map 3.
Yep, ladies and gentlemen, not going to waste any time with it. We'll be heading to a quick break, and when we do come back, we've got our third and indeed final map of the day coming right at you. And for the last time today, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Gamers Without Borders. This is our qualification tournament. We're running 3 separate tournaments in 3 separate regions to find the best of the best from each region to see who is moving onwards to our main event where they can fight for real player cash prizing. As throughout this weekend, we still have $150,000, actually I think more than that, on the line per region in terms of charitable prizes that can be given out, of course, based on their selection. We've got the final map of the day incoming here in our North American matchup. So let's not waste any time as we're going to get ready to jump into it here and see who will top things out in this matchup, who will move on, and who unfortunately has to fight things out inside of the lower bracket. All that and more coming your way in just a few minutes here. I think we're just waiting for 1 or 2 players to get themselves readied up, and then we'll be good to go. Once again, the Leftovers versus the Gaimin Gladiators is going to be your matchup one final time.
Yeah, it's already been quite the interesting matchup, as well as we already saw what happened on Bank, as it was a pretty stark back and forth there for quite some time, but finally came down to some heroic efforts from GG and forcing their way into the basement site, getting that plant down. But enough said about that, folks. We've got Chalet, the last map of the day here for play day 1. Or Gamers Without Borders, and it's in between Leftovers and Gaimin Gladiators. Let's get down to this ban phase. Let's figure out what we have to deal with.
Haven't seen anything too crazy so far as we're going to be going into Chalet for our final engagement. Yet another Chalet map. We've caught a few of those today. And Flores will be the first operator to be banned out. He's kind of been the go-to operator to ban out inside of Chalet and a few other maps now just because of his capability to clear out utility. And these teams have been fond specifically of banning him out on the past 2 maps as well. So just kind of a repeat there. Thatcher, once again, still the top of the list for the most part when it comes to attacker bans. It might have fallen off a little bit just because he's been worked out of the meta so much. The teams don't necessarily need to ban him anymore because there's no guarantee the team's ever going to use him if he's left unbanned. So it's kind of a take it or leave it sort of choice nowadays, but generally speaking, he is still left out a lot of the time. Valkyrie, a bit more required still, but very much in the same position as Thatcher, just on the defensive side. And then finally, Mira as well. Another one of those kind of take him or leave him operators where generally they're either going to be banned out or played quite heavily, and this time she'll be banned out.
Yes, indeed. And that's going to set us up for a fairly straightforward affair here in between these two on Chalet. Flores and Thatcher are both making quite a bit of sense. It's going to leave the Maverick open for the hard breach, and I'll more than likely be working that in just to try and pick some things up around the site. But that just depends on what they see for denial. You got to remember attacker repick in as well, so they don't necessarily have to front load the hard breach like they would have to in previous years when it came to Siege, just to make sure that they had enough in order to achieve everything. You can kind of go for a more niche operator lineup on offense because of the influence you can have inside of the prep phase on that lineup now. So, Gaimin Gladiators, they'll begin this prep phase by trying to discover where the Leftovers currently are. And it's going to be the basement site. And this site having some recent adaptations that we've been seeing. We talked about them a little bit earlier on. A big one in like the last handful of months, probably like the last half year, is a lot of teams starting to break up the single panels inside of Wine into Snowmobile Garage, just because of the angles that you can get out towards Garage, especially with some of the shield play you can have around there. And I mean, even past that, with a zombie coming in now off of not only quarantine for competitive Siege, but off of quarantine for Gamers Without Borders, we are set to play with her downstairs as well, which could make even more of a plethora of issues for this offensive unit.
So we're going to continue to see how the Leftovers can utilize Azami and the rest of their kit here, mainly sending Butters off onto his own island with the Azami right now to fend off these early clears. That top-bottom breach actually might end up being heard by a few of the members of the Gaimin Gladiators since it's being prepped so late. We've got a few of them entering in through Trophy. So possibility for that to have been leaked over. But for now, it's not too much of a concern as Butters will change his position quite drastically anyway. For the rest of the Gaimin Gladiators, it's a slow push for them at the beginning of this round here, not immediately moving in and taking any serious control for themselves. And with good reason, too, because of the aggression that we are seeing spin out from the Leftovers camp thing. Nice shot even going to be given by Quartz. Now that Dexter lands it and indeed knocks out our first member of the Gaimin Gladiators, setting up our defenders quite well at the beginning of the opening round.
Jolton playing with fire here inside of blue, but looks like he wants to continue on. Almost like he wants to be burned or at least win out this fight. He'll eventually drop the angle here almost a little bit too close for comfort on that initial one, but knows that he has a mute jammer in the back area now, but he's going to take up a Prisma on his swing, just that natural fire catching him off guard. Just those pre-fires usually send while you're trying to get in towards side will punish him just a little bit. He sees the leg of what he thinks is a person, but obviously not. That being said, though, Gaimin Gladiators down courts at the current moment. Going to have as much of a entry capability as they once had. The trading game not going to work out the same way either. They're going to begin breaking things up over here on the trench side. Drones are out now. They got the hatch open inside of a kitchen as well. They can potentially drop drones down into. Butters will try and add to this as he'll simply throw out one of his kunai and try and make a play off of that, but nobody trying to pressure just yet. They've actually switched on over the snowmobile. We could see them potentially try and go for this wall soon enough, but they've added a couple of kunai to this as well, so we'll have to see how that will work out as finally Gaimin Gladiators able to procure a kill of their own.
Trades back quite late, but for the Gaimin Gladiators, this may very well work out. Problem is, they're not chaining anything together here currently. Butter is able to fend off the next attacker. We're going to see a few try to insert themselves into the back of Wine. We've got a breach for them to play through as well, so a two-tiered insertion to show up. Bit of a delay on that, though, and actually well-placed one, as Barring is able to line up a nade to eliminate Filthy as he tries to swing back in. Barring with one more before he finally is exchanged out by Butters. He also takes out the only other player on this back flank right now, and that's going to be Arrow. Rudy, last player alive here, snuck himself in from the trench hallway. He's going to be able to need to get this plant down and just won't be able to leverage it, unfortunately. It's close at the end of the day, but Max moves forward, shuts it down when he was so close to the plant, and that is going to give our first round over to the leftovers.
A solid start here to our last map of the day for Leftovers, making good on their promise of basement, and now shifting on over to Bar Gaming, another site that finds quite a bit of success for the defense overall when it comes to Chalet, and hopefully it will gift Leftovers yet another round here. They're going to continue to pilot the Azami into round 2 here as well. Also, the offense, I believe, getting a Lion in here too. Yes, Arrow will be on that. So, more than likely, a lot of these EU1Ds will be utilized early to try and clear out a lot of these far-reaching areas that are required to play a site like this.
Going to be a bit of a different take just in terms of the way that the Leftovers need to approach it. They'll need to remain a bit more active, at least in their upstairs presence, to keep the same amount of control that they had in the previous round here. And for the Gladiators, obviously going to have an easier time sussing out the positions of the members of the Leftovers, but that does not necessarily mean they're going to be able to eliminate them. As we've seen time and time again, this upstairs hold can be quite difficult to push your way past. And with the Azami barricades being added into it, see Dexter specifically just stacking 2 of them on top of each other right here to be able to block off that window pretty much entirely. Anybody that hops in there, first of all, more like is going to have their feet shot out, and if not, they're going to have to waste probably a good 10 to 15 seconds opening up that breach to be able to continue walking through it. So another good example of how Azami can really mess with the layout of some of the maps.
Well, now here for GG, based off the position of the current moment, will at least be able to hold some things down on this upside down rappel. Nobody trying to take this gunfight back. Hearing that LMG sing, they know what's on the other end, and they know that it's more than likely death. Frag grenades as well here to try and influence something inside of the building. Frag grenade in, and a decent amount of damage dealt to Filthy as he'll run over the top of the makeshift landmine. Barring now, trying to work his way back towards the window. Has the drone into play, can try and assist himself with a little extra information, but where's the rest of his teammates at? Looks like they're trying to begin working their way through the building. Jolton, they're droning things out, especially around the main hallway here. Still some very solid positioning from Leftovers around blue, as well as inside of library, especially for Dexter, who's going to have some super great positions to play, just given the circumstances that he's now given himself with all of these different kunai positions. Stuns will rain in, another one, but there's not actually any potential to push this because they don't want to try and push through that smoke.
Dexter swinging in, taking a challenge, and it'll work out. A bit of a risk behind it as well, especially with Barring on the other end of that fight. nearly manages to lose it to him, but comes out on top instead and keeps the early advantage in the favor of the leftovers. Will he be able to keep it is now the question. Another member of the Gaimin Gladiators, looks like Rudy, already in position to re-swing this, but Rudy may not have the confidence to go outright versus Dexter here. May try it from the other window instead, but you can see how Dexter will potentially get support if Rudy tries to go that route, as Butters is available over on blue stairs to swing in and help things out from the connector. Jolton has been able to isolate out Filthy. That removes the smoke from play as well, giving our attackers a little bit of extra time to play into this assault. As you're going to see, still with a large majority of the Gladiators working on getting themselves second floor access, the overall clear of the site is a bit far in the future at the moment here for our attacking roster. Dexter as well still has free reign to deny the lower window hop in also, so the Gladiators still with a very bleak path to move forward, and it's so bleak in fact that Butters feels the need to get aggressive, ultimately to his own defeat though. Had a hard ping. I saw the red out of the corner of my eye going on to courts for the stairs, but he paid no mind to it, tried to take out the player inside of the side entrance and goes down with nothing to show for it. Baxley, though, able to come in here and pick up not just one, but two frags. Don't even really need the rotation from Dexter, as Max has managed to handle this all on his lonesome. Arrow now the last player alive, and while the pre-fire is in the correct position, the timing is not so much. So our defenders come out on top for a second round.
Well, now for the leftovers, 2 rounds to their name, able to take it to Gaimin Gladiators 2 times in a row, something that was so hard to come by on Bank, but now is seemingly easy for them, playing it out on the timer and not even really needing the additional effort from upstairs, but it was definitely helpful at the end of the day, just in case things did go not exactly according to plan. But for leftover sake, they have a Maxley, and he tends to hit his shots, as we just saw there inside of the bar gaming space. Time and time again, able to rip the heads off of these GG members and just make this man count such a difficult number for GG to try and fight back from. But now for leftovers, they're going to shift things on over to potentially their last site inside of their site rotations, which will be Kitchen. We'll see what they do after the site, especially after potentially after winning this next round.
Let's see if the leftovers can keep their streak consistent. This team overall probably not a little bit, there's probably not too jazzed, I should correct myself to say, with the way the last map panned out there. Seemed like they once again kind of had control of things, only to lose it inside of overtime due to a play from an individual member on the Gaimin Gladiators as well. They're feeling like that they could have potentially thrown that the other direction, so maybe taking this map a little bit more seriously in terms of their capability to outright shut it down here. Either way, we're seeing at the moment leftovers take the most consistent early game control that we've yet seen out of either of these teams in the series here. Normally these guys just going back and forth constantly until we hit a late game point. At the moment, it's been all leftovers here inside of the first 2 rounds. Curious to see if our third attack for the Gaimin Gladiators will change that up at all, or if the leftovers will be able to run a full 3-site gauntlet for themselves here. You can already see Jolton and a few other members of the Gladiators trying to work their way into Solarium, but as you've probably noticed by this point, bit of utility from the leftovers, or a bit of a player count, I should say, on the other side of this looking to fend it off, but they will deal with that without too much of an issue. It's Dexter as well. This has been one of the main pressure point players that the leftovers have looked to make early impact, so him going down with nothing to show for and only a minute off the clock is not necessarily a good sign here for our defenders extending their hold throughout the rest of this round.
Well, Court's in a pretty tough position at the current moment. Lots of shots from a lot of different angles, but fortunately enough, he's seemingly making it work. Butters with a lot of damage dealt to him now. Obviously, the initial pick going their way as well. A great position to be in at the current moment. Frag grenade out, but I believe that Barring just now realized that it's actually been, I believe, sealed by a shield there, just to make things a little bit more complicated for them around that area. So now, a minute and 15 seconds remaining. Gaimin Gladiators with plenty of time to be able to try and work out this situation, but are they aware of the presence still on this top floor?
Max constantly keeping an eye out for it. Filthy seems to have come in to help out as well. While he's taking down Jolton, and it seems excuse me, tongue-tied here. We're in like hour 9 of this. Rudy continuing to fire through, though, finds even more frags against the leftovers roster. Butters and Max now the only two remaining. Max still an unknown element, though, so he's able to jump out and surprise for at least his first kill against Arrow. A lot more to go beyond this, though, as Rudy already well on his way to getting the plant down onto the ground. Not going to be interrupted by this peek from Butters either. It is completed. And now Rudy will be free to jump out, not only for himself, but Barring also getting himself into the fray. He finds Butters truly leaving Max out on an island here in a 1v3. Unfortunately, not with a realistic amount of time to retake this site, and more than likely going to be looking at the first round going up on the board for the Gaimin Gladiators.
Well, not if Max Lee has something to say about it, but as you said, it's a pretty tall task, and well, we see how decisive that was from GG, finally able to get their first round and shore this score line up, not allowing the 3-0 split already. It'll be 2-1 with Gaimin Gladiators maintaining the ability to take a side advantage going into the half. Leftovers, though, are going to be shifting some things up. They're headed back downstairs after that last defense did not go their way. This wine cellar defense, though, most definitely did, as Gaimin Gladiators seemingly did not have an answer to a lot of the different angles that were being thrown at them.
So as we continue to progress, the Gaimin Gladiators once again in control of at least a first round for themselves. Will they be able to bring it back to a tie point? Or does Leftovers immediately retake their own control? This hold was close when we played it back on round number 1, coming down, I think, to a 1vx or a 2v1. Ultimately just barely favoring the Leftovers here, but primarily due to the slowness that we got out of the Gladiators themselves, a little bit too slow to line themselves up for the actual basement assault, leaving them with not enough time to properly flush out the 2 to 3 remaining members there for the Leftovers. And unfortunately, not a lot of real estate to work with either, as their entry attempts had for the most part been denied. They try to go for a late round switch up to work their way in from line side, including the side hallway over there by Trench too, and just kind of overcomplicated things. So we'll see if they can make it a bit more straightforward this time for themselves so they don't run into the same pitfalls.
Lots of bullets going off on the northern side there from Bahrain. Not able to find anything with them, though. Probably just some destruction to create some new angles on the top floor. Make it harder for the Leftovers to try and retake towards the northern side. Rudy's going to find some space at the bottom of Tellers, or bottom of Tellers, at the bottom of Trench here on Chalet to make sure that they can get down and get this hard breach in. Jolton will be able to claim Filthy. That was another player that we saw downstairs just for a moment, but now gone to the wayside. Have to worry about Maxley here inside of West Hall as well, but as for the rest of it, seemingly clear for the time being for GG.
Gladiators continuing to look for more advantages that they can attain here, as Maxley is getting spammed by Quartz's Twitch drone right now. Not sure what's going on with that. Just trying to annoy him back down to the basement, I guess. And the plan seemingly has worked here for the Gladiators, able to move their way forward and force Maxley away from that. Maxley falling back more so because of his overall low HP rather than the poking from the Twitch drone. So don't mince my words in the way that ended up breaking down here. Is once again still continuing to see the Gaimin Gladiators hold up after they found that opening kill for themselves. Quartz wanting to make absolutely certain that he doesn't have any flanks to worry about before he begins to entry himself in, as he is a little bit alone there. Barring pretty much in the same position, but Barring gonna get hard swung. The wrong read on it from both Max and Dexter, though, as Barring finds an easy double for himself, bringing the numbers of the Leftovers into an even more drastic scenario, which is Butters and Adapt alive down below.
Well, it'll have to be hard fought inside of the 2 versus 5 for Butters, as well as Adapt, all now on sky high, as well as some of these kunai to come in and try and assist with this. Adapt, you got to worry about these angles along with Butters, but he's already dead to the world as well. Butters now forced back towards the rotation, but Rudy's going to push it to the limit immediately inside of Wine's stock. Continues to swing on through and finds him stuck in the mud inside of the rotation due to the EE1D. Gaimin Gladiators with a quick 2 fired back at Leftovers.
So we stay locked. Neither team able to work themselves towards a definitive advantage here. So it's going to be back into the bar. as well as gaming room next up here for the leftovers, is we're going to see a couple change up in the operator department. Mainly Filthy going over towards a Frost, an operator we're missing on the last defensive attempt to the site, but one that we've certainly seen in the past from quite a few other teams within North America and globally. We were actually talking about this earlier, about how we've started to see more and more Frost picks just spread to kind of niche sites where you have a lot of window play and a lot of potential for late round executes where attackers may mess up and decide not to check the flooring on their way in, despite the fact that they're aware of Frost is in play, and that can get you a free down or two, which can obviously be the thing that ends up tripping up your opponent's attack and give you a free round at the end of the day. So Filthy's going to take the gamble on that, and we will see those welcome mats be placed down promptly over the next few seconds here as the leftovers try to kind of get back control of things after getting themselves off to a good start, but now running into a bit of a wall here as of the past 2 rounds, giving Gaimin Gladiators back their own position inside of this matchup.
Well, an even scoreline, dead heat in between these two as we enter round 5 now. It's going to be a bar gaming defense for the leftovers. The Gaming Gladiators doing their damnedest now to try and collect the lead for the very first time here on Chalet. Rudy will open things up here for Snowmobile and begin clearing things out on the bottom floor. A lot to do still here. His connector is clear, but has to look in towards the rest of the building as well. But seemingly only wanting the front end of this will clear out himself and then have some assistance from his teammate outside as the second drone will work its way in towards blue. As for the remainder of the Gaming Gladiators, though, more than likely working around the building up towards this library area, and that's exactly what Arrow is on as of the current moment. Still has those EE1Ds to try and assist and influence these early engagements. They're going to need some solid info from the drone game first in order to do so.
A minute gone from the round, and so far relative inaction from both teams as the Gladiators still look for their first entry point to really try and lock themselves into a true aggressive play here. Quartz lined up for it on rappel, ready to move himself forward, but for the rest of the leftovers, seems like they have mostly flushed themselves away downstairs, but Dexter is ready to play from his hard lock position here behind Library. Filthy able to utilize his as well to find another one versus Rudy, and Dexter does catch the swing coming in from basement, but it's still too slow to stop the counteraction. 2 additional pickups found, Jolton and Quartz making them happen. Adapt able to trade back one of them, so mainly going to be Barring as well as Quartz now maintaining the interior site position. The problem is Barring is locked here. Thought for a second he may have seen Butters. If he had shot, would have had the right read into it, but Butters reads into him first instead. Brings it all down to Quartz here, who did maintain some hallway positioning down on the first floor. Was not going to be able to keep it. He goes down, and the leftovers do take back their control at a 3-2 scoreline as we head into the final round of the half.
Well, solid advantage here from leftovers as they're going to head towards the kitchen and dining room site. Offense for Gaming Gladiators looking into this last moment will obviously be focused on more of the soft breach potential, also just bringing some tidbits of hard breach in the Finka and Twitch for that solid fragging power. Lying along for the ride as well to try and assist with those EE1Ds in that info game that we've been seeing. Them try to abuse time and time again throughout this offensive side, sometimes working, sometimes not. As for the leftovers, though, Maxley will go off of the alibi that we've been seeing and play quite a bit here today, and instead bring the Thunderbird along for the ride. The Kona stations will more than likely assist in a lot of these engagements once again, especially when it comes to Dexter's sake, which we'd seen a lot of his engagements earlier on inside these last couple of maps where he was able to make it off at a lower amount of HP that you'd really want going into some further engagements, and these will definitely help stem the bleeding.
Gladiators falling behind once more here, but not so much just yet. Plenty of opportunities for this team to get their footing stabilized and look for a better path back into this game here and back into this series as well. Also important to note, once again, folks, double elimination bracket for this tournament over the course of the weekend. Our losing team is not going to be done just yet. They'll have a chance to rebound against the losing team from our other matchup, which is between Parabellum and Space Station. Whoever ends up coming out on the losing end of that will face the loser of this one. Winner of this plays the winner of that other game, so on and so forth here until we reach an eventual winner for a double elimination format, which will be claimed on Sunday. That'll also decide, at least for this region, who the best team is going to be moving forward to our main event. point during the summer. Excited to see how that ends up going. Still focusing back up on this round here. We can start to see the Gaimin Gladiators taking their initial bits of control, mainly Quartz, trying to peek in towards the car garage and firing down the hallway to see if any pre-fire would line up, but not to be the case. The leftovers have contained their defense mainly on the second floor extension as well as the first floor hold, of course, because that's where their site is. And Butters, man, what a swing and a correction here. Some shots are thrown at him from Quartz, and he very quickly sends them right back through the window to get an outright headshot to eliminate him.
Butters will be holding it down with Adapt here for the site. Butters now opening up some more angles with the Keratos as well. A solid option when it comes to creating some nice little niche holes like this to manage windows or anything else in between. But not really past that. You're not going to use it to like make a rotate or anything of the sort. About halfway through the round now here for GG as they've lost Quartz off into the wind now and into the 5 versus 4. Arin looking like he really wants to try and hop into Trophy at the current moment, and this could work out for them. Doesn't have to worry about any traps of any sort that could be laying at his feet or up above him like a Grijmont mine. Nothing really to worry about in that category. Only going to be holding down Trophy for some time, though. This is always a solid position to hold on to for a moment, but Arin runs away, seeing if he could potentially make it back into the window. That audio cue, get it to where the player can potentially feel a little bit more safe, but it's actually going to give him some very awkward timing there, but it actually works out in the favor of GG. Luckily enough, though, for leftovers, they'll be able to at least pick up one, and I believe the fight's still going on, as unfortunately for us, ladies and gents, it looks like our observer had a little bit of an issue.
Yep, so that shouldn't affect the game state based on everything I know. That game and that server more than likely is still going. That was probably just a client crash for our observer. So stick with us here for a few minutes. We are going to very quickly reconnect that observer, which more likely means we have to interrupt the game. So we've got to contact the players. It might take a few minutes, but we're going to work on getting that restarted as quickly as possible. There's just going to be an extra round onto one of the team's favors by the time we get back into it, like we said. Either way, though, things remaining fairly close between both of these teams. It does look like the leftovers are currently kind of in that pole position for this matchup so far, but I feel like that could change based on how closely these rounds are playing. Give it a Chalet as well, and that can be sometimes quite brutal against the team's less favorable side. We still could see things switch up in the Gladiators' favor when we get past the halfway point, which I think was coming up on that round, actually.
Yeah, yes, indeed. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see who actually ended up winning out that last engagement, because that's going to have some pretty heavy influence going into this next half. But, I mean, past that, I really do think that we're more than likely going to see GG make somewhat of a comeback. They did have the advantage inside of that round there, so there's a very big chance that they were able to tie things up yet again here, and that could really muddy things when it comes to leftovers next half and what we could potentially see. I mean, we've already seen one max OT. We could have another one on the docket.
These guys are playing not only very neck and neck, but to some extent, like the way the gunfights are breaking down, it's very scrimmy as well, to a way where it's going to be bound to kind of go back and forth a little bit. So I have to agree with you with our possibility for an overtime. I think it's very much in the cards here, unless one of these teams gets a real lock on the other one's strategy there to be able to shut down rounds consistently, because that's just not happening for either squad right now. There's always adjustments. This is a good thing, obviously, because it means we get a more competitive match. But there's always counter adjustments showing up, and their opponents are just not responding to those counter adjustments quickly enough. So we constantly are just going back and forth and back and forth. This map's been even more wild, because I thought we were finally having a bit of a breakaway moment at the beginning, but then nope, their opponents in GG just bounced right back with 2 rounds of their own, and then I think we had another run of 2 rounds just now as well from the leftovers. We'll be finding out in a second. Nope, it went 1-1. I jinxed it. My bad. So it ended up going 1-1 there at the end. So we are truly just right back in the seesaw now that we enter round 7 with an additional round for the Gaimin Gladiators.
Well, something's got to give. I mean, the real question is now who has the favorable side? Are leftovers just nasty on offense? Do Gaimin Gladiators have everything in the cards for themselves when it comes to their defensive setups? We really don't know, and that's what's going to lead into the very exciting moments of these, next potentially 6 rounds.
So we need to see if either team can get the best out of it inside of these, or whether we need potentially an additional 3 to truly get ourselves a winner. Either way, Leftovers starting this series off with the first map, Gaimin Gladiators striking back with the second. If you are just joining us, this is the third map between these two teams, the winner of which is not going to gain anything just yet. They will be able to move forward into the upper bracket finals of this North American bracket. That will put them in a very close position to be able to qualify for the main event coming up in just a few months' time. Away from that, though, not going to be a whole lot happening again. We've only just spawned our attackers, of course. It's going to take that minute or two for them to get in a position where they can truly do anything. And it's looking like there is going to be some basement shenanigans being built up by the Leftovers, by Butters specifically. He's been droning that out for himself now.
Looking back and forth in between drones, trying to see if there's any GG members around the initial area that Leftovers is looking to procure, but obviously not, as they move quickly through. And not only that, but they pick up a nice kill as well. Filthy holding the trench angle, and someone just not seemingly aware of the situation going on inside of that area, so be able to take down Bahrain. That actually might have been off of the master double there as well. Kind of hard to say, as we just flicked over there at the last moment, but either way, Adapt will start working his way in for the hard breach part of things, as Leftovers have gotten essentially a hole opened up into this defensive setup.
Already half the round
Now
gone.
literal
Leftovers getting themselves ready for something right now. You can see by the stack over at the main doorway. Definitely wants to get a bit of a breached execute here into the dining room if they're going to be allowed to do so. Would more than likely want Butters with them for that. Butters probably building up the confidence to work towards a back-end extension here also. And at the moment, not even seeming to need Butters. Adapt as well as Dexter. Two clean starters to this one. The refrag attempt going to show up here now from Arrow, and it'll work out as he catches Max at the top blue stairs hallway. That's going to leave Jolton alive still on the defensive end of it as well. And this will be problematic for the Leftovers. They really needed to maintain that upstairs position, and now they've lost it. Their plan is no longer as short. I say that, but Arrow is having a lot of problems locking down where it's coming in from, and Dexter saves the day. Very well could have seen the planter get interrupted there. Doesn't end up happening, and that leaves Jolton all by himself on an island, already injured as well. So should be a closeout for the Leftovers here to take the lead at 4-3. We'll hold it for just a moment and see if Jolton can give us a show.
Yes, indeed. Best out of his maps we've seen thus far. Currently 7-4, swinging into trophy, takes the fight for dining, but nothing to it just yet. But there's another body with Dexter all the way out at the fireplace door, the 1.5, making this a little bit easier for him as he can just connect the rounds to the air exit range. And the Leftovers able to procure their very first round on the offensive side, starting things off just like they did with their defense.
Bar and Gaming is up next here for the Gladiators as they try to come back yet again, and with good hopes to do that as well here. We're going to continue to see these guys play out the rest of this series. See a lot of the same elements going to stay in play for the Leftovers, seeing how well it worked for them in the previous round. That includes Butters on the Nook. Going to try and see if he can sneak himself in, since he never really had to do much on the previous round. Say that, but the card was already drawn, of course, and that Butters has just played into it, so it seems like they're not favoring that anymore. He will switch back over to the 0 and re-add those Argus cams to the utility pool for our attackers, and hopefully give them a greater capability to spot out some of these extended positions from the Gladiators before they become fully useful. Did see that utilized in the previous map as well to a pretty hefty degree, but unfortunately didn't end up stopping a whole lot. So we're going to have to see if we're going to, in this time, will work out better for the Leftovers.
5 seconds left.
We're going to be bringing in this 0 here for Butters, although I at least have some extra intel as to what's going on inside of the building. Especially when it comes to rotations, that secondary hard bridge can also be a lifesaver if something happens to adapt and they need something a little later on into the round. So for Gaimin Gladiators, now trying to reconcile with what happened in the previous round, getting punished by the Leftovers, and just making overall little mistakes that really just gifted the round over, making it way too easy for the Leftovers to get things done in towards the actual site. And speaking of which, Maxley, quite easy entry in towards Solarium, but the audio cues will give it up, as well as now the cannon fodder being sent the way of the defense, but Jolton will catch him off guard with an off-angle re-peeks, but it's ill-advised that the Leftovers have the advantage again.
Leftovers indeed in control, and now just need to keep it that way. The transition over towards the site area, oftentimes the most difficult part of the round, but Leftovers have so much map control here, both vertically and horizontally, that it's going to be tough for the Gladiators to fight back, regardless of the control that they may have here. Butters as well, trying to send out those Argus cams to see if any intel will present itself. Not looking like he got a whole lot of usefulness out of it, but drone maybe will be a little bit different here. There is one of those cameras still sitting up in the corner as well, so definitely can get some useful intel out of that. He needs to pan back towards it, just maybe nothing in vision immediately to utilize. We got a few more members. It looks like mainly Dexter upstairs here trying to work his way in. Initially was going to try and flush Baring's position out, but don't even need to anymore with the kill being found outright here. It's Rudy and Quartz against the world now. Minus Max, of course, due to his premature death earlier on in the round, with a minute and 15 seconds to go as well. There's not really a hope for Quartz and his teammate to delay this out. They are going to need to fight, and thankfully Quartz, as well as Rudy, are primed for the challenge. Each one picks up a kill, and that evens us back down into a 2v2.
Solid position for both of these teams really at the current moment. Unfortunate look there for Leftovers, as they had quite the advantage built up for themselves, but they gifted it over. Gotten it to an equal moment now for GG, as they've been able to fall back towards site, but Rudy has already had a lot of influence. But Quartz, he's had some influence of his own, as he's now found himself the double. Adapt now trying to work his way in from the main fireplace area. They know more than likely that he's around this space, as he just got rid of that van. He's stunned in, sees one swing out and tries to challenge back through. Potentially knowing that this player is going to be here, he'll be able to take down Quartz, and it's all left up to Rudy on a sliver's worth of HP. He's going to have to take out Adapt in this situation. There's no way that he tries to attempt to plant unless he's just going to try and fake it in this situation. He moves forward, he catches him off guard, but Adapt with the flick, the recorrection to take him down. A singular bullet tags the man, and it's over right from that moment.
Nicely done indeed, as the Leftovers are making their mark and are not necessarily letting the Gaimin Gladiators find an easy path back into this one. 5-3 now becomes the scoreline. A 2-0 run at the beginning of the half. Again, can they push it further than this, as they need just 2 of the remaining rounds in order to lock in a victory and a spot in the upper bracket finals? You want to check real quick and see if our other matchup concluded over on the main stream. It does not look like it, as I think they are also in the midst of a third map right now, folks. So just a quick reminder, if you're interested in checking that out, it's going to be over on our main channel. Let me try and see if I can get a bit more of an accurate score in terms of where they are. Unfortunately, I went to it in the middle of a round, or in the middle of like a round transition, so I can't see that yet. But in a second, I hopefully will. And it's the moment in favor of Space Station, it looks like. But to what extent, I cannot tell you. You'll have to give me a minute here until we get back in game.
Unfortunate timing.
5-2 for Space Station. There we go. Yeah, I got it.
Hey, 5-2. What's the map by chance?
Oregon, it looked like.
Oh, okay. Making quite a bit of sense when it comes to SSG, if I had anything to say about it. But that's that. Leftovers, speaking of advantages, in the 5-3 advantage. So not as much of an advantage as SSG, but definitely one that they've built upon and are looking to try and take home at this point, as they're only 2 rounds away from being able to claim this. And not only this, but the first day of Gamers Without Borders.
Filthy gets things started for the Leftovers once again and takes out one of the most impactful players as well, Baring down before he can make his aggressive contribution. Not the only one, as we've seen others from this team step up over the past 2 maps, though. Quartz trying to do so now from the perspective of the Ella here, but a drone more than likely going to spot him out. No, never mind. Didn't get the full vision, I think, so Quartz takes the gamble on it, darts out into the open, is able to find the trade against Filthy. Beautifully done by Quartz.
Well, he's on a tear at the moment, but he's only equalized himself in terms of KD. Trying to push himself one step further, but there is somebody on his piano window, and that's when the pressure's going to come in. They're going to pre-fire everything, but somehow he's made it out. I believe he pre-fires Butters across the window. Quartz, not a single sliver's worth of HP missing from this man's HP bar. He makes it out of hell alive and practically scot-free.
So another intense situation for Butters here. Really trying to push this game over the edge for the Leftovers. Not going to be able to accomplish it just yet. Either way, the Leftovers are frozen slightly after that play from Butters, but Not going to stay that way for too long. Finally getting the confidence to swing out against the Blue Stairs play now. Butters prime position to shut out Quartz, and he'll do that, taking only an extra sliver of damage here. As well, getting rebuffered up pretty quickly due to the utility from Max. 3 players remain, however, and a little over a minute to go as Max begins to open things up along with Adapt to be able to, or Adapt, excuse me, to be able to open up the wine room for their play to move forward here. It does look like that last exothermic from Adapt got denied. He was able to pocket it, however, before it went away. So he's going to try to throw it out one more time, especially now that we have dealt with the interior sight presence from the Electric Claw. That's the secondary angle this team needed to push themselves forward. And as well, Adapt, I don't believe, realizes it yet, but he does have a free push from this point forward. Jolton's not going to be able to stop him. Arrow will be able to now because he's rotated into the corner. Still's going to have to spot that first off. Arrow as well, denying the first push in here. Dexter tries to swing for the doorway, and he's going to be in prime position to stop that. Only 20 seconds remain, so Adapt going to go for this, but he's got to be careful not to swing too aggressively. He's also carrying the case. The Nitro, though, will send him back down into his grave this time around. Jolton being the one to send it out. Arrow locking in for another kill, and there's just not enough confidence coming in behind this push right now for the leftovers here. They get themselves really stuck at that doorway and never really seem to postulate enough confidence to move beyond that, so they walk directly into the defensive setup due to a lack of time, and it goes into the Gladiators' hands as a result of that.
Hard fought when it comes to the site setup, but it comes out in favor of Gaimin Gladiators. A valiant effort as well from them as they're able to take down a lot of the leftovers members from a lot of those far back angles, especially inside a connector. Some big plays coming out of the Kaid, not only stopping the plan, but also delivering when it came to the fragging capabilities at those longer ranges. And now GG, one step separates them between leftovers and, well, either match point and map points or tying things up and forcing at least maximum rounds inside of regulation if somebody wants to take things. As for leftovers, they aren't looking to change up too much on this offensive side, feeling as though the Zero was not doing enough for them. And honestly, I can kind of agree. There's not too much off-site presence that we've seen from Gaimin Gladiators at it. You know, the craziest amount of influence, at least inside that last round. A lot of the site presence really getting away with, you know, a lot of the major kills that we were able to see there. Now for Butters, having the potential to sneak into the map could really work into their favor to look for some of these initial picks.
Got the leftovers out and about yet again here, looking to take control, looking to maintain their newly gained lead here. Obviously putting it into a bit of a delicate point after dropping the last round, but I'm not going to fear it too much. Already opening up a path forward from inside of the basement that Butters is more likely going to be using once again, as we saw just about 2 to 3 rounds back. Filthy has other business to attend to as he's going to be moving over towards the front door and kind of establishing Overwatch until they have a better job for him on the sledge. Not a whole lot in terms of top-down openings that need to be made just here and now yet, so he does have a bit of freedom while the rest of his team works into a position where he can be utilized for that. That'll be coming up soon over the next minute or so with the rest of the leftovers starting to move in, taking control of the area, I believe around library, and then trying to push out the office hold from there.
Butters now slinking into Snowmobile Garage just to recheck his camera. Didn't turn off his health presence sensor though, so we'll have to wait for that to be able to cool off and come back to him later on if he does indeed want to use it again. Dexter, though, finding some extra info here for leftovers as, yet again, they're looking to extend this lead. So the economy looking solid at the current moment as we are about halfway through the round. Frag grenades out to try and clear up some of this site utility, making things a little bit easier for Adapt as he chucks a stun in just to make sure that things are clear for that frag. And Jolton will take down Dexter actually on a long angle, I believe, as soon as that wall blows open. Actually ends up taking him down, unless that was from upstairs. Either way, fantastic kill happening from him. And Barring will actually be able to find one of his own, as Filthy will go down as well.
Butter's still looking to make impact as he's been sitting in the basement for a good minute plus now, waiting for the rest of his team to get in a better position for him to swing out from it. So he's going to be keeping himself here, and it's a good thing too, because there appears to be a top-down angle set up specifically to counter this right now. And it would obviously be fairly inopportune were he to peek the staircase now. Waits long enough, though, so I believe that threat from the Gladiators is now gone. Worried about something else instead. Actually, it may not necessarily be the case here. Butters seems to be somewhat aware of this, and actually is going to be gifted the headshot against Quartz here. He pops up just as the nade went out, so a nice opportunity gifted over to Butters. As the leftovers try to battle their way back into this round as pretty much as slowly as they possibly can here, giving Butters as much time as possible to make the impact here before the rest of the team is going to be forced into an execute. The same can be said for Maxley up on top. So he's trying to limit these top-down counter angles. A little bit of a yellow ping coming out to try and help him as the swing around comes in. Max does not catch the player immediately in closet. Even worse, the dap downstairs is going to be found out along with Butters by Jolton. Rudy gets the last player. That's the Gaimin Gladiators with one more round on their ticker. Once again, decimating the lead that the leftovers had previously built up and tying us up.
Yeah, it almost felt as though leftovers were playing that a little bit too slowly, a little too protected, and just could not simply get away with that round because of it. Gaming Gladiators able to stay steadfast in a lot of the positions due to the slow-moving nature of leftovers in that round, and it's going to assist them in gathering control of it as well. Even some hot pings coming in upstairs for the player inside of the closet, but Maxley just immediately runs downstairs instead because the timer is already eating at them. They need to try and make sure that there's somebody on site to assist with this plant. He can't deal with that player upstairs at the current moment, so he has to hightail it down low. He immediately loses his life after the first engagement goes his way, obviously, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day since the round is indeed GG's.
No clear leader showing yet again as the leftovers have lost their own ability to kind of exercise their will across the map. We'll see if they can get it back here now. As the Gladiators once again bring a very similar lineup to the table. A lot of freedom in terms of their capability to roam across the map, playing very much for the individual right now, with the utility helping out the team whenever it potentially can. Set these guys up for as much success as possible, but not necessarily relying too much on each other in order to make plays either. That strategy has worked to get the Gaimin Gladiators as far as they have gotten, but they do need to go a little bit further here. Rest of the team on the leftovers here, just taking their time with the opening clear. Going to try and get this nade in position to isolate out Jolton, but instead, never mind, they can it. And try and go for a nade. Instead, that just reconfirms Jolton's position, and Jolton realizes what that may mean, so he's going to fall back into the depths of the bathroom here, not wanting to tango with a potential utility toss thrown out against him. Filthy, as well as Barring, though, we're going to find trades against two completely different sets of players. Either way, it will lead to the death of Dexter and Arrow.
Well, nice little exchange back and forth, but that's basically been the name of this entire series so far. Jolton now with a fantastic map after Bank not really going his way. 12-6 here on Chalet. That's what we like to see. As beginning to build up these kunai knives as well, it could potentially assist him enter on into the round. Speaking of the round, things slowing down for the moment as well. Leftovers trying to find some more information when it comes to the office side of things, and not too much to really come back on at the current moment. I don't believe that Filthy knows there's a player into his right, and he does not, as he has a magazine out of his gun, tries to get the ADS, but simply cannot. Jolton with yet another kill, and now up over 2.0 KD.
Butters fending off this play from Barring pretty much perfectly. Reads him like a book. No problem catching him there. Rudy, Jolton, and Quartz are all that remain of the defense here. We do end up seeing our attackers take ultimate control over this scenario. Still lots of time to build away, however, so that's why leftovers aren't going to leap themselves into the site just yet. Once again, wanting to make sure that they do not overstep themselves. This is how they've lost rounds in the past. Jolton still needs to be mitigated upstairs. Rudy can potentially support either of the remaining members of the Gladiators from his blue stairs position. Aside from that, I just don't think the leftovers necessarily had a good drone intel about what the site looked like as of yet, so that could also explain why they've been fended off a little bit. Jolton gives up his upstairs position, though, and will rotate away from that. So that is now full top-down control over in the hands of the leftovers, and they've got a little over half a minute in order to transition it onto the site.
Oh, 3v3 at the current moment. Not really giving up too much for either one of these squads, as leftovers will start working their way above the actual site. Looking for the hatches now to make things a little bit easier for them to trying to influence some of these engagements down low, but Butters, I do believe he's ended up being caught off guard, but no, it's actually on the other end. Court's now in behind and able to win out at least the initial gunfight, tries to rotate around, knows he can potentially try and get the case, and he can! No cover for Adapt. I thought initially he was through the wall planting on the other side, but no, that'd be the hallway instead. He's planting inside of the bar, and he's taken down because of it.
The Gaimin Gladiators bring themselves back into the fold here, and as such, do take control of the initial match point. Leftovers now need to rebound, and not only do that, but win it out inside of overtime as well, with just one round to strike back. Otherwise, it is going to be a 7-5 win for the Gladiators here, with the Leftovers having to fight it out in the lower bracket against, because I believe we actually do have a result from our other game. Let me see if it got updated yet real quick. Doesn't look like it did. So I will check our stream once again. In a sec. I want to see it.
Checking. Oh, I can actually give you the result. I already saw it. Would you like to know?
Looks like Space Station won the other game.
Oh, they did indeed. It's a 2-1.
Yeah. So whoever wins this one is going to go up against Space Station. Whoever loses this game is going to go up against Parabellum.
Oh, that's gonna be pretty fun. I also thought it was pretty funny. Skies tweeted after the game and said if Siege ever returns to online play, he's retiring. And he's like, it's a completely different game. That was just not good. Like, which is pretty funny. So either way, though, now for Butters and the rest of Leftovers coming into this next round, we really are looking to try and lock things down here and try and get into this overtime. And it's going to require pretty steadfast effort. So he'll initially put in one of the Argus cameras. It'll get immediately taken away from Jolton, who is now down towards the bottom of West Main Stairs. Now, the rest of them, especially when it comes to this north take, looks as though we're going to have quite the foothold for Leftovers initially. Shouldn't be able to be dislodged by Gaimin Gladiators quite easily.
No action really building up just yet inside of the first minute here. Both teams continuing to build up intel more than anything else here. But it will work out for Filthy as he's able to claim the opener there. Have a slow wind-up towards it, but eventually Arrow is isolated, meaning those Electric Claws go down. No ability to reapply them. And if we was still keeping one in pocket, as we sometimes see, that one as well is now wasted. Clean opener for the Leftovers, but as we have seen in some of these past rounds, that opening kill doesn't necessarily translate to absolute victory here for the Leftovers. Sometimes they get a little bit too slow for themselves and end up giving the Gaimin Gladiators enough room to battle back into it. So we will see if they can work towards that yet again. Keep in mind, of course, it's the Gladiators looking to end this match in their favor here and now. Otherwise, the Leftovers will trigger overtime.
Pass the pick onto Arrow. Really, the only thing that's dying is the economy of Leftovers. These drones cannot make it through. Only 3 of them still around, but fortunately enough, they've got Butters with the Argus cams, and he might be in trouble, even though he doesn't know it. And yes, he will indeed, as Barring storms down the far stairwell, is able to take out the lone member. Still seeing presenting potential for yet another member to try and rotate back, and there is. Dexter's here, and he's going to begin pre-firing this space. I was one inside of West Main as well, but he has to try and dip out. Max Silly will be able to claim his life.
Leftovers continuing to fight for their upper bracket lives right now, as well as a chance to take on Space Station Gaming in their matchup tomorrow. Well-placed nade from Filthy knocks out Rudy, and suddenly it's the Leftovers in control of this assault here, as they just need to knock out both Jolton and Quartz, and we will be triggering overtime for the second consecutive map. Before I can even finish the sentence, it is done, and we will be pushed into that position. OT is triggered yet again, and we get 3 more rounds on the board.
Yes, indeed. As we were talking about before, it seems like these two can simply not get away from each other when it comes to the scoreboard. And yet again, here on the final map of the day, it will show its head yet again. 6-6 as we move into overtime, and it's going to be a best of 3 rounds. Whichever one of these teams is able to get to 8 rounds first will be the victor. It's going to be Gaimin Gladiators with a possibility of 2 defensive rounds and 1 offensive round, with Leftovers having the exact opposite of that. So starting things out on the offense here for them, and a pretty solid lineup mostly the exact same lineup that they've been bringing for a lot of their offenses initially.
So we're going to continue to see these teams dance around each other. There's going to be yet another kitchen hold coming in here for the Gaimin Gladiators. To really lock in a bit of a lead for themselves after faltering on that one final round they had for themselves in the basement hold, just giving over a few too many entries, the Leftovers crew, giving them the room they needed to work their way in. For the Gladiators side of things, it's all going to be about repetition here, making sure they keep it consistent, especially considering they've got the defensive edge, so how close these games have been. They're able to just fall back on the sites they found success on. Things will more than likely yield results for this team, but Leftovers as well, showing us quite a bit of fragging prowess throughout the course of this series. Between really this entire roster, I'd say everybody except for Adapt has had a real MVP round or two here so far throughout the course of this series. So a lot to be reckoned with on that roster as well, with them trying to move forward here further into the upper bracket run. But for both teams, still going to have a chance at it tomorrow. Even if they lose, they will continue on in the lower bracket.
And it's a fortunate thing about having multiple lives in a tournament like this. And now for Leftovers and Maxilli, looking to influence things more with the drone game as they'll try and push this a little bit further. Filthy now as well, with one that was over inside of Office, trying to find out what's going on inside of Master. And the answer, not too much. It's barring instead over near the piano area, but more towards the Master Closet, kind of a harder area to try and communicate when it comes down to things. Usually teams just differentiate their call-outs quite a bit when it comes down to it. Actually, obviously can't get rid of this castle barricade, so he's going to rotate back towards piano, try and assist with this situation instead. Does have a frag grenade if he wants to try and really get rid of this, but we'll have to see exactly what he wants to do moving forward here. Max Elite now with the drone in, we'll be able to try and find out some of the positioning of the GG members here around this top floor, but mostly all of them playing in very safe pastures.
Max continuing to wait for an opportunity to frag, but instead that hesitation is going to cost him. Barring, noticing the opportunity, jumps out piano window for the pickup, but Dexter is there, noticing the lack of support on Barring to be able to find an exchange. No team yielding a serious advantage from that. Filthy as well, swinging wildly into the breaches made inside a master bedroom. Catches arrow to refrag him, but Cord striking right back in a separate fight now against Butters. And Hilton too, gonna try and move in, try to refrag against Filthy, but this time he will finally break the chain, knock out Jolton, and leave the Leftovers with a 3v2 advantage.
Well, it's hard fought for him at the current moment. Is Leftovers still having the man advantage here after Filthy's fantastic expression upstairs, able to take down so many different members of GG, and yet another one to follow as Quartz tries to recoup by coming up the main stairwell. Rudy now has to try and work around a different way. He'll be able to slink on past here. Doesn't have any more smoke grenades as his plan's going to go start going down here for the moment. He'll sneak back under this barbed wire, will give him away. Filthy with a triple kill here on the round, the potential to close things out on the defensive end for Leftovers.
Is looking a little bit better indeed for our attacking squadron as they try to push it towards the bitter end of this series after already quite a few hours of play between both of these teams. It is once again going to be the Leftovers in pole position to do so themselves. It's 7-6, and it'll have to be the Gaimin Gladiators that fight back. Wouldn't leave that potential out of the cards either, against the once again teeter-totter nature of this series continues to evolve. Gaimin Gladiators looking for their own overtime point to keep it going for maximum OT here, and seeing if we can get this all the way to the final round on our final two maps. Away from that, though, heading into the round itself, we'll see if there's going to be any twists and turns to this setup for the Leftovers. Generally, I would not expect that, given we've got a very straightforward operator lineup to play into this site. Putting more emphasis on utility and delay over literally everything else here, as we can see 3 mitigation operators and 2 quote-unquote delay operators, if you want to count Castle into that category, more so in just the fact you have to waste time knocking out his barricades.
Absolutely. But luckily enough, you know, getting rid of castle barricades, it's easier for some rather than others, like Jolton with that sledgehammer that can just decimate him in one shot. And he can do that to quite a few other pieces of utility throughout the defensive setup as well, but not necessarily inside of this one, or none that he would really want to use it on, I guess. I mean, he could if he really wanted to, but I mean, sludging an ADS or like a my disc just is a little overkill, at least in my book. But past that, Jolton is going to have the ability to get rid of a lot of these castle barricades. It could be kind of pesky this next offensive play. But the big thing is that what is their next move? It's going to require a lot of information gathering initially because of the overall setup that we're seeing here from the leftovers, some extra info inside a fireplace as well, along with that here for this bar gaming hold. And obviously that means that they're up towards the sky as well inside of library with this top hold. Reinforced quite well as well. Dexter will be out on the library balcony. Butters inside of the small space here with Max trying to help them hold things down over on blue.
You can continue to see here the remaining members of the Gaimin Gladiators looking for their first point of entry, and Arrow might have to be the one to flash himself towards it here. He's lined up to try to make that first entry into the library, but doesn't necessarily have the confidence to directly contribute towards it just yet. It is going to work out for him, though, in the long run of things. He does find the initiation point to get himself to the inside, knock out Dexter, and bring it down to a 5v4 with the Gladiators now in control. And Adapt, unfortunately, being the only other presence that could have gone upstairs here, well away from it. Downstairs, hiding out inside of the side closet. It's all going to have to come from Max, and Max doesn't even have free access to the connectors, so we can't really do anything about the library control, just to try and delay for as long as possible from top blue, and see if he can catch players a little bit deeper into the site. Butters will take an engagement, and he'll even down Jolton, but is not going to be able to finish him off. Jolton will get reboosted from the adrenal surge. The only problem is going to be when he has to jump back up, but it works out as a bait there. Butters expecting a different player to be in that position. Instead, it's Arrow that comes back down and picks up the kill for himself, and then Jolton does the same exact thing when Filthy tries to refrag against him. Finally, Max says enough is enough. He's going to swing back out and finally knock out Jolton. But it still has left the leftovers as a shell of their former selves. Max with a tiny little sliver of HP to play with, and Adapt with full HP, yes, but he's the only other player aside from Max still in this engagement here. And man, Adapt can't even stay in the fight for very long. Barring immediately knocks him out, and Max now left alone. There we go, as Barring cleans it up. We go the full distance for a second map in a row.
And that's going to be 30 rounds in between these two in just the last two maps. An incredible feat that it takes all this time. And I mean, thank God that we do not have unlimited overtime, because I'm telling you, these two would go all night if that was the case. It seems as though neither one of them able to really get anything over on the other. Pretty evenly matched in a lot of different regards. It seems to just be on a round per round basis as the decisions made inside of that round as to how things are going. Not really that things are very decisive and it's taken a long time to get things figured out for either one of these teams.
So we're going to continue to take a look here, see which team can finally top things out in our final round of play. If the leftovers are also going to change anything up here with their attacking lineup, not looking like it. This has worked pretty well for them so far throughout the map of play. And so they have no true reason to try and switch it up so much here on the final round. Timke said for our defenders, Court specifically seeming to find a nice lock in there on the Ella, as he's popped into that operator a few times already. Just going to make a reappearance in towards it, and Barring over towards a confident pick as well for himself there. Bring the Vigil into play to be able to roam around the map with that. Let's see how it goes as we enter into the final round of play between these two teams.
Well, with 15 seconds now off the clock here into the last round, and some solid info already coming through for the offense, knowing at least one of the moves of the defensemen as they'll shift their way back over towards the top side of library. See if they can hold on to that for some time, but more than likely falling down into sight here momentarily as well. But you can see there's quite a few reinforcements across the board as Gaimin Gladiators are trying to hold the full breadth of the map away from leftovers. Filthy as well, already working his way here into office. This is going to be a big part of what's going to break down inside of the next couple of moments.
Quartz just waiting so patiently for an opportunity from one of the members of the Leftovers to try and swing into him. He does not want to force it, but at the same time, the Leftovers don't seem too keen on doing it themselves either. Time continuing to tick down, though. Eventually, it's going to have to be Adapt, Max, and Dexter making the move here against him and trying to knock these players out. As otherwise, time will eventually favor the Gladiators, of course. Quartz still just sitting back and waiting, and he's got no reason to panic here. He seems to have full control over the situation. His Barring is also supporting from the inside. Well, not anymore. Was supporting from the inside of Solarium there before Butters was able to knock him out. Quartz struggling similarly also here. Filthy able to isolate him and remove him from play, giving the Leftovers a potentially very dangerous 5v3 advantage. Rudy, Jolton, and Arrow will now have to fight back from the brink to keep themselves in the upper bracket.
Well, they've wounded the Gladiators, but we'll see if it's lethal as it comes down to Rudy, Jolton, and Arrow. Quartz and Barring, they're done for this series. We won't be seeing them again, as Leftovers still have their full man advantage going into the dying moments of this round. Still some hard breach to be had here as well. Arrow, if he has this timing on lock, this could be a very, very key moment here. As Jolton is actually going to go on the extended roam, a very, very ballsy move when it comes down to the 5v3 situation, but one that could end very well for them as he drops in. Those ones got to be around the area, but this could be a miss rate here as they don't exactly know where this person is. It's finally going to be able to catch a member, but the explosion from underneath, the screen shake gets Jolton, and now he's been locked down from the zero. Butters will take him out. Filthy gets one. Arrow will find one of his own, but he'll be gunned down from the firing squad of Leftovers. There's GG's in the chat as they will take this best of 3.
Heartbreaker for Jolt, man. He really needs that patch now, as that may have very well saved him, but not going to end up happening. And instead, as you see on your screen, it's the Leftovers that take control of this final map, as well as this upper bracket initial matchup for themselves, moving them forward to play against Space Station in their game tomorrow, and sending their opponents down into the lower bracket to face off against Parabellum. Great match played between both teams, and indeed goes the full distance. But obviously, again, the Leftovers coming out on top here as they retake control at the bitter end of it and end up closing out this map 8-7.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite an interesting matchup in between the two, especially for some NA teams that you and I really don't get to get our hands on really ever. So really fun to be able to see what they kind of have going on and, their gameplay, especially with those last two maps and how close they were.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, so that does wrap it up for the day of festivities here. We are all finished up with all 3 of our games. We want to thank you all very much for tuning in once again. We saw great plays out of Europe. Of course, the debut of Spoit to start the day off. Moving onward from that as well, we had some great games inside of Latin America. And of course, this game here to finish out the day. It's going to be the same times tomorrow as we'll route through 3 additional games as well. Make sure you're keeping it locked here on the Bravo stream for Gamers Without Border. And of course, don't forget to check out our main stream also. Either way, that'll do it for the 2 of us. We hope you have a good rest of your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow for more Rainbow Six action.